Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the Second Page Podcast, where we are talking past the points. Today we have a great episode for you. It is Saturday, February the 10th, and of course, I am Joseph Oswald. With me, as always.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Jay Martinez with you all. Welcome to episode 15. And with us always, Sir
Sir
Johnson.
Stephen, Sir Esteban.
I thought you forgot my name.
Behind the wooden desk.
I wasn't sure if I was going with the Steve or the Sir Johnson. I want to make it more official with the
Sir
Johnson.
is good. I like that.
Yeah,
Right.
but Sir
I thought
Johnson
you
kind of
would.
sounds like a different kind of movie.
Look, man,
Sir Steve or Sir Johnson?
I plan on being knighted.
Just
Indeed.
Sir. We'll just call you Sir.
Well, how about we get the rundown for Jay, huh?
Let's do it.
Oh, you tell me how to do my job, Joe.
Yes.
We're like a minute in. Come on,
Yes.
man.
Yes.
Anyway, so this week, of course, we have the weekly White House scandal. It is Rob Porter this week. We'll be tying that into Hope Hicks, and she kind of likes him a little old and a lot to do with the White
She
House.
likes him saggy.
Easy.
Easy there. Hey, it could have been a lot worse. Okay. Our Grand Fuhrer, Donnie, he has demanded that requested that the DOD give him a military parade down Pennsylvania Ave. North Korea seems to be winning the Olympics. Puerto Rico keeps getting snubbed. It's almost 200 days and they are still without water, food, and we have a little anecdote there to cover. Spending deal was passed. Dreamers got nothing from it. Government was shut down by by Rand Paul for a little bit. And
It's always a Paul.
It's always a Paul.
It's always one of those.
We're gonna cover Governor Murphy
Yeah, he
and his
kinda
New Jersey
broke and
tax
told the
plan.
truth.
Who got broke and told the truth?
Rand
Paul. I mean, he's always been kind of telling the truth. He's just a hypocrite about it. Governor Murphy and his new tax plan and how he's going to help out New Jerseyans evade the federal government. Will weed be made legal in New Jersey this coming week? And finally, but not least, Joe's long dream of watching his Philadelphia Eagles win the Super Bowl happened this past Sunday.
EAGLES Eagles.
We'll cover that a little bit, and he will tell us about his experience down in Philly. He was there in the parade.
Well, we have to have some lighthearted stuff on the show every now and then because it just seems like every day we're just headed towards the apocalypse.
Like I said before the show, I've been feeling a little depressed about our politics lately, so something light would be great. And like Steve said before the show, for me, it wasn't really about Philly winning. It was more about Tom Brady not winning.
Yeah.
And the Eagles made it happen, so I love him. And to point out, Tom Brady is now 0-3 versus the NFC East, which is a big deal. So NFC East rules the AFC East.
I kind of feel like if there was a candy for this show, it'd be called Apocalypse Now and Later.
If there was a candy.
Never had a Now and Later?
And that is our
No.
first dad joke of the show. All right.
Well, I can't really make dad
You
jokes
win.
because I'm not a father, so
I'm
I
a
guess you
dad
could
and I
say
didn't get it, but okay.
How
guess
do
you could
you
say
know?
I'm a faux pas.
He did it again.
Oh my God.
That's two.
And with that, let's start
Okay.
with Rob Porter.
Yes, let's get no, we're serious.
Let's-
Everybody, we're getting very serious right now. Rob Porter.
Rob Porter this week.
Go for it, Jay.
All right. Well, another week and another scandal in the White House. Rob Porter, which was the White House staff secretary or chief of secretary. I don't even know what his position was, to be honest.
Everybody's Donald Trump's
Yeah,
secretary.
he's something. He was accused this week by both of his ex-wives of physically abusing them. The White House and him kind of held out for a couple of days, but he finally ended up stepping down earlier this week. He has some connections to Hope Hicks, who he's been dating. And if all of you have stayed, if you've been paying attention to the book that came out, there's some kind of secret
Fire
allegation
and
there that there's some affair going on in the White House, and some people are saying that could be Hope Hicks and Trump, but this is not the
They
first
also thought it could be
administration.
Nikki Haley, too.
Yeah, I kind of don't see that as much as I see Hope Hicks, but
Yeah.
hey, what do I know? She's been tied to other senior administration officials in the White House, but lately it's been Rob Porter who she's been dating, and once again we have someone else in the White House on the hot seat this week. So yeah, guys, what do you think? It's a Me Too movement, another allegation. What are your thoughts
Well,
on Rob Porter and
I
the
think that
response?
what you have in this Me Too generation, there was a very interesting article that went around Facebook and other social media talking about the 68 very powerful men who have been brought down or lost their positions because of the Me Too, including Kevin Spacey, including people like Steve Wynn, who we talked about last week's episode, who is now just this week stepped down from his company, the Wynn Resorts, which is that casino mogul thing out west. It used to be a competitor of Donald Trump. They used to not be friends, and then he became his right-hand guy at the RNC.
There's a lot of crazy things being said about him and what he used to do there.
Well, you can only imagine. I mean, I hate to anybody anybody, I would never tell them judge someone by what they look like, but just look at Steve Wynn and tell me that he does not abuse women, or he doesn't abuse his power or use money. I mean, just like Donald Trump, he's a gambling mogul. He's a guy that makes his money off of selling women, selling dreams, bankrupting and indebting people, taking money, and he doesn't really produce anything. He's not a producer, he's a taker. At least that's my opinion. I'm sure there's plenty of people that would disagree with me. I'm sure there's plenty of people that think that just because he's wealthy that he's somehow better than us, which is why a lot of people thought that Donald Trump would be a good
all want to be
president.
wealthy, and we think
But
it makes us better.
With the thing with Carter Page, I'm not Carter Page, I'm sorry, we'll get to that later. sorry, the thing with Porter is that not only was he having a relationship with a coworker, I guess you could say, who in her own right was inexperienced and not qualified for a job in the White House, but that doesn't matter to Donald Trump.
We could say that about almost all of his officials in the administration
Exactly.
currently.
Porter was abusive towards his wives, allegedly, and I'm sure that it will come out how far the extent of the abuse went. But you have someone like Donald Trump who insisted that people remember that he has said that he was innocent, because Donald Trump has also declared himself innocent from the wrongdoings against women. But then you have Mike Pence saying that there's no room in the White House for domestic abusers. He's out. We got to get out of here. And it really, to me, almost looks like Mike Pence is just like, am I going to be president soon? Like, should I get ready for this? Should I start ordering drapes? Like, what should I be doing?
That might be a little premature, but sure, why not?
Well, the thing is, though, that when you have the vice president of the United States saying that there's no room in the White House for people like this, and the person running the White House is a person like that, and then that same person is saying, just remember he's innocent, we wish him all the best.
Well, just as of 45 minutes ago, President Trump has tweeted, people's lives are being shattered and destroyed by mere allegation. Some are true, some are false. Some are new, some are old. There is no recovery for someone falsely accused. Life and career are gone. Is there no such thing any longer as due process?
I mean, can I say how that's hypocritical in so many levels?
You can, but
I mean, he's not wrong either completely. He's not completely
before
wrong.
we get into that, so we talked this week, and one of us each week will play the Trump Whisperer. And
oh yeah,
I will try.
You're going to be the first Trump whisperer? Everybody at home, please note that this is not an anger translator.
Not my thoughts.
This is not an anger translator.
I'm just trying to
these are not
relate, so it's
Steve
not
Johnson's thoughts.
So we're not alienating half of the country.
Well, 1/3 of the country.
Yes, right. So he's not, as you said, totally wrong. I think we have lost a lot of the idea of due process and people being accused, and that's like the death nail, as though they should go away forever.
Yeah.
Now,
look at James Franco.
Does that apply in Rob Porter's case? No, because he's admitted to this and showed pictures of the black and blue bruised eyes of his ex-wife. So this is not a thing that's in question. Now, why you would have a man who has admittedly done this in the White House?
And for a long time. I mean, Kelly said he would resign if he was asked. He said he would resign.
Yeah, but that was more like a threat.
No, it wasn't a threat. He was kind of just like saying, listen, if he wants me to resign, I'll resign. I handled this poorly. You know, they shielded him for so long. You just had a week ago Republicans getting on Hillary Clinton for defending her faith advisor who sexually harassed people when she docked his pay, demoted him, moved people around, and they said she didn't do enough. She should have fired him right away. You know, and she should have gotten in trouble for that too. So should the chairman, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, should Kelly be in trouble? Should Donald Trump be reprimanded?
Look, this is 15 weeks we've been doing this show. And
hey, thank you for joining us, Rich and Miss Seymour and Martin.
Yo, what's up, guys? Thank you for joining in. Anyway, so yeah, it's been about a little over 2 months that we've been doing this show, and I'd like to think that at the beginning, I was maybe the more hopeful, optimistic one, and
now that's all gone.
It is, and it's depressing, and it is kind of sad at a fundamental level. Like, I almost really tuned off the news this week, which is kind of bad for, because I'm supposed to do a recap at the end of the week. But it's watching all these things happen, all these clear hypocrisies, all these allegations, these scandals and seeing how no matter what happens, his administration, Trump, people aside from Trump, Republicans all around really are right now kind of just rubbing things off. Like it's not sticking anything to them, right? And if this would have happened under Obama, I mean, any one of these things would have been political poison for the Obama administration, something that would have been super damaging and something that they would have held over his head forever.
I
And
believe
yet,
there'd be pushback for a parade.
and yet, here we are. And yeah, in the same week, we're talking about, a planned military parade because Donald wants one. He's defending a guy who's, been proven to beat his wives. And then he comes out saying that it's not fair. And again, the crazy thing is he's not really wrong in what he said. It's just that he has the audacity to say it after A, Portman is clearly guilty, as you just mentioned, and B, I mean, Trump isn't innocent of all these things. Yeah, he hasn't been, I guess, proven guilty in the court of law, but he's been caught saying things like grab him by the pussy. He's obviously an adulterer. Language. He had an affair a month after her son was born. And all these things just, he has evangelical women out there saying, well, the point of religion is that we forgive. That is a point that if once you come to God, except
only if
unless
you're white
a Democrat.
and a Republican.
We just had a few months ago Roy Moore running for office and having all these religious people saying, well, we could excuse these things because he's chosen
and
by God.
now there's an actual Nazi running for the GOP in
right?
Illinois.
Right? So,
District 3.
Honestly, for me, it does feel like the world is in the upside down. Like, it really, to me, I don't know what needs to happen. And we'll get onto it later. I'm not going to, get into another topic before finishing this one off, but I feel like this week was super bad for the Democrats, and they're losing steam going into November, and things just aren't looking good, at least in my opinion, and I'm sad.
Well, with regards to this, this all of a sudden call for due process and fairness and treat everybody equally, despite the fact that we're talking about a president who has never, ever treated anybody fairly or equally. You have 10,000 years of history where people have accused, who have said something, people who have been abused and harmed, whether they were women that were sexually assaulted, whether they were children who were beaten, whether they were people who were fired for one reason or another for being gay, for people that were cast out of society for being the wrong color or the wrong religion, who have made accusations that these things happened and were not believed for so long that we're finally entering into an era where we're like, okay, maybe we should start taking these accusations a little bit more seriously. It is not a violation of due process to make an accusation. This is what we do. We just now have social media now. There is still due process. If you accuse someone of something and then you don't go through with it, yeah, you can be sued for libel. And while your career may be damaged, while your reputation may be damaged, most of the time, these types of accusations are not made lightly. They're not made so that out of complete falsity. Like, there are some times, and it's been in the news sometimes, there have been women that have falsely accused men of sexual assault. But at the same time, there have been women who have accused men of sexual assault, and they weren't believed, and then 10, 20, 30, 40 more women were assaulted, drugged, raped, beaten, abused, children that went missing because someone said that this guy is a predator, and they did nothing about it because they didn't want to harm his reputation. They didn't want to take a chance of hurting his job. People like Brock Turner, who have a judge asking for this person to have to reduce his sentence down to 3 months and to even wipe his record because they're afraid of what it might do for his future. Poor little blonde white boy looks just like my son. Why can't he have some clemency?
But yet that woman of color that shot her captor to death.
She shot a pimp, and
she's serving life.
She's going to serve life in prison.
So, okay, and this is the. I guess the
we
problem,
went off on a
right? Like, so on the left, and Bill Maher had someone on last night, and I can't remember her name at the moment, but I will find it and give her credit for this quote. But she said that on the left right now, we're in this place where there's no distinction between Harvey Weinstein and Aziz Ansari. We're in a place where there is no redemption, right? So it's almost as though
poor Al Franken, right?
What'd you say?
It's a poor Al Franken, right?
No, and again, and that's the thing. It's like, can we draw any lines? Can we talk about this in a responsible way? Because again, to quote her, on the left, on the hard left, I should say, we're in this place where you have to break a few eggs to make an omelet. Meaning, if a few innocent people get caught up in this, so what? It's for the greater
Hey, listen,
good.
it works for the military.
And is that really how we want to have this conversation? Is that helpful in the long run? And you can look at, if you look at, and I'm not like making any excuses for James Franco or Aziz Ansari or Matt Damon, but these are people who wore the pins, said like, I'm in support of this thing, and then get torn down because of something they have said or done in the past. And it's like, if the opposition and the enemy is all men, and if you say anything, you are contributing to the patriarchy. What is your path to victory at that point? What is the end goal in that point? Because as a man, there's a lot of men now that will look and just say, you know what? I support the movement, but I'm just going to do it in quiet. I'm not saying anything in public out of fear of
kind of like the people that
vindication.
didn't say they were going to vote for Donald Trump, but ended up voting for him because they didn't want anybody to know that that's
Right.
what they were going to do,
And
but in
I
the
think-
opposite way.
And again, now the way we're having this conversation in public versus the way we're having it in our living rooms are very far apart,
Very.
right? And that is a problem,
Yep.
right? And we're just getting to this place where it's almost like it's this hive mind. So if someone makes an accusation, if I say, yes, I believe you, let's go have due process, let's let this thing play out, it's almost played out as though I am in support of the accused, and I don't, you know what I mean? It's like, so if I say let's let the due process play out, that means I support the patriarchy.
Yeah.
I support women being abused, and I think that we're on the extremes of these things, and we have to start talking about these things in sort of common sense ways. It does, because I say I want due process does not mean I don't believe the woman, and it doesn't mean that I am victim blaming. It just, the whole idea of a democratic society is that we do have due process. And if we're saying we're throwing that out.
Well, listen, even when you talk about before there was an American society, you had someone like John Adams, who, our second president, who was a lawyer and defended British soldiers
At the Boston Massacre.
Yeah, they were accused of doing something wrong, and he was able to secure a fair verdict that allowed these men to be acquitted. But still, the British Crown said that they didn't think that people could be treated fairly, so they started taking people's rights away. So this is something that for hundreds of years, the idea has always been that even if the accusations are true, even if the accusations are false, no matter what, we're always going to believe what we find more comfortable to believe, what seems right to us. So when someone like Donald Trump says people aren't getting due process and they are losing their careers and stuff like that, he is talking about the fact that he is afraid that that's how he will be perceived because he has been accused of those things too. But he doesn't care about, minorities that are accused of crimes they didn't commit or who are unfairly punished for certain things. He doesn't care about the women that are raped and abused, and only 5 or 10% of them actually come out and say something or go to seek medical attention for a rape kit or for something like that. He's not talking about them. He's talking about people like himself. He's talking about himself. He doesn't want himself to be put through a process that he perceives to be unfair. But he doesn't want that same process for everybody. And just like he's shown through the people he hires, through the people that he fires, through the people that surround him, that he surrounds himself with, his main goal is protecting Donald Trump. He wants to protect himself and his family and his wealth, and then he might spend 2 seconds thinking about someone else.
And there lies the hypocrisy with his tweet.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I agree with everything both of you just said. We live in a country of laws, and these laws state that if someone's accused of something, that they have to go through due process, and you're either convicted or not. And again, are the laws right? Are they wrong? Do they need to be fixed? Sure. There is a statute of limitations. There's different there's different reasons why some women don't come out when they do and wait decades to do it. So, there's a lot of things that we have to retroactively go back and fix. But this whole thing about ruining careers and ruining reputations based on a comment or a tweet is definitely getting out of hand.
Mm-hmm.
And we should be able to make the distinction between, Steve Wing, an Aziz Ansari, and then a Rob Porter. There are clear differences. And I think right now they're all being muddled. and everyone just falls under the same thing, which is why someone like him could survive in an administration for almost a week and being defended, because now it's like, oh, well, we have to draw this distinction. We have to find out what's really going on. We have to make sure this isn't just a witch hunt, when clearly, like, this guy has done wrong. But now we're living in a society where, you know, it's so quick to pull the trigger that everything needs to be now, or needs to appear like you're being fact checked, or it could even be used for the benefit of someone that has done something wrong, which in this case, the White House kind of helped out Porter by defending him and, you know, using, I guess.
Do you think that Donald Trump believes in due process when it comes to
Absolutely
Mr.
not.
Robert Mueller continuing his investigation properly?
You're right in everything you said. He only cares because, like you said, it could be something that could be used against him, and that's the only reason Donald Trump cares. And
I don't think we're allowed to use the words Donald Trump and cares in the same sentence. But we're going
Unless
to.
it's about himself,
We're going
then
to
he
push
could.
the boundaries today. We are the R-rated network.
And how does Hope Hicks tie into this, Joe?
Hope Hicks ties into this because she's probably tied up somewhere in the White House, likely in the Lincoln bedroom.
Oh man,
She's likely in the Lincoln bedroom getting herself some Lincoln log.
Jesus Christ!
And also that, because
I'm giving you a single shot.
there's a
We
giant
just lost a bunch of female
there is a
viewers
giant hypocrisy in there when you talk about surrounding yourself with the best of the best, and when you talk about how we need to believe women and how women need to support each other and stuff like that, and then you get a woman like Hope Hicks, who is in the White House because she's pretty. She's in the White House because she made the right moves. She schmoozed the right old guys. She's
Well, she did
among the
schmooze
ranks.
Ivanka first.
Yes,
She worked for Ivanka
She's
first.
in the ranks of some of the best
I'm
gold
gonna play
diggers
the
around.
Trump whisperer here when you're done.
Trump
Go.
whisperer. I do like it, though. She's among some of the best gold diggers that you can find up there with Melania, who by accident got pregnant. You know, I'll keep my opinions about that to myself, which you know.
In right now.
Well, because I think that it's ridiculous that there are women out there, that there are so many women out there that are so respectable, so deserving of respect, of praise, of promotion, of a good job, and they are kept working at 7-Elevens and kept working in minor jobs that they're not fitting for. There are women that are teachers out there that are educating our children. There are nurses and doctors, and not one of us can name more than 5 of them. But you have a person like Hope Hicks who has done nothing to deserve where she is, and she's in the news, she's in the White House, she's got Donald Trump's back. I mean, there was just a video that a friend of mine tagged me in where Donald Trump in 2007 was at a real estate and wealth forum, and he was talking about a beautiful teenager, a 17 or 18-year-old girl that asked him for a job on the airline on one of his planes. And he said that he talked to her, that he asked her if she had any experience, and he asked his aides, and his aides said no, she has no experience, she has no idea what she's doing. And then he went and he asked her, and she said, and he kept repeating how beautiful she was, how attractive she was a diamond. They couldn't find another one like her. And she admitted, I have no experience in doing this. And she's like, you're hired. And he's saying this on camera at this forum. A woman in the audience, a very comparatively beautiful woman, asks for a job right there in front of him, and immediately he asks her to come up on stage. He brings her in, he grabs her, pulls her, hugs her. I think should we give her a job? I think we're going to. Geez, it's like being an alcoholic. It's like an alcoholic watching good scotch being poured down the drain. I mean, this is what's going to get me in trouble. He's saying that in 2007. This is what's going to get him in trouble.
All right, let me ask you a question, good sir.
Are you whispering right now, or are you Steven right now?
I am. I'm just asking a question.
We need a button. We need like a button, like where a little red light comes up you.
And we know who you are.
Hope Hicks.
Yeah.
It's not as though the White House is filled with qualified people in their stations, right? This is a White House that had Sebastian Gorka. This is a White House that had Omarosa. This is a White House that had Michael effing Flynn, right? And maybe he was qualified, but, you know, there are other issues there. So my point is...
Nick Scaramucci or whatever that guy's name is.
Scaramucci, yes. There you go. Anthony Scaramucci.
He needed a federal job to protect some investments.
Yes. By the way, and I was watching...
Betsy DeVos?
Yeah, exactly.
Keep going.
So...
And
by the way, Jared Kushner has a mortgage that's coming due of $1.2 billion in 2019, and I'm pretty sure this is the reason he's in that spot. He's gonna make some things happen there. But I'm getting sidetracked. My point is, it's not as though Hope Hicks is less qualified than some of the other people that are in that office. And if she has been in service to the Trump family, nepotism rules the day over there. So to say, I don't know that it's fair to say that like she slept her way to the top, because
Didn't say that.
I'm not saying you did say it. You did say she was taking a Lincoln log
in the Lincoln bedroom.
I need a joke.
Okay, but so my point is, I don't think she's any less qualified than the clown show that's there, right? So her appointment doesn't surprise me any more than Betsy
29
DeVos.
years old, leading her department of the White House.
You have a man running the EPA that doesn't believe in climate change.
They just said
who believes in clean coal.
And he just said it might be a good thing.
Might be
a good thing.
Might be. So again, it's not, this is nothing out of the ordinary.
I'm just gonna say it. I'm a little jealous.
And maybe
29.
There are all these rumors she slept with this person and she slept with
Corey
that person.
Lewandowski.
Right.
Trump said that's the finest piece of ass that guy will ever get.
Right.
Quoted.
Okay.
Quoted.
Quote
and
the
they're
Trumpy
saying,
nevermore.
And they're saying the Rob Porter thing happened because Corey Lewandowski snitched on Rob Porter.
Did he?
Because Rob Porter took his girlfriend. But again,
snitches get stitches.
We don't talk about who the men are sleeping with, so I don't think we should talk about.
You're right.
We absolutely do. We're talking about Donald Trump's cheating on his wife with Stormy friggin' Daniels.
Is that on the
Makes a
topic
valid
list
point.
today?
No, it's not on the topic list, but we have plenty of times mentioned
Back
these
to your
men.
point initially, do we have to balance it out every day to make it seem fair, or are we just assholes because we're bringing it up?
I don't know.
All right.
That's it. That was
you
my
were the
Trump
one that
list.
put up a picture of a man attached to Donald Trump's actual asshole.
That was a live picture.
That was a live picture.
That really happened.
It was a filter.
Yes,
filtered.
Instagram filter.
Well, I think that we've beaten that into the ground. And I don't mean a pun on that one.
Oh, okay.
Because Porter,
because the dots were the gears were turning.
Me too, man. I thought we couldn't go there.
Yeah, we can't, and we're not.
Okay. So what's on the docket?
What's on the
docket?
Trump
and the military parade.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Donald Trump decides to go to France, and he sees the Bastille Day parade, a parade that celebrates, that celebrates the French and their glory of breaking through that prison and the revolution beginning. And that is a celebration. It is a military celebration. It is something meant to evoke the nationalism and the pride of France, not its military prowess necessary. It's a
or
parade.
that of their president.
It's not about Emmanuel Macron. It is not about him.
I think you got spit on the mic.
It is that's why you have this pop filter.
Okay.
But it is not about the president. It is about the French people. It's about the people and their victory of revolution over monarchy, over dictatorship, basically. And Donald Trump just happens to see that. And he decides, I want a military parade too. I want people going up and down Pennsylvania Avenue. And
so like Mr. McCann.
I want to see a tank. Okay. I want some tanks and some missiles. I want to show everybody that my fingers are big and that my button's big. And
did you just turn into the principal from South Park?
That's what I'm
Mr.
saying.
Mackey.
Mr. Mackey. There you go, Mr. McCann.
That's basically it's Donald Trump without the big head.
Okay.
Yeah.
And honestly, some of the people I've seen posts from actual Marines who think that it's absolutely ridiculous that they're going to be forced to march for this person.
Yeah, Robert O'Neill, the SEAL that was on the team that killed Bin Laden. He said that. Hold on, I have the quote here somewhere. He said that is some third world bullshit, and it's out of place here.
This is the DC Council saying that this is not appropriate at all. We do
really
not have the budget for this.
Dictatorship.
It's exactly what dictators do.
The last time we did was 1991 after we won a war.
Yes, exactly.
After we won a war. We haven't won any wars
nothing
right now.
to. I mean, not that there's any way, shape, or form talking badly about our military.
No, not at all.
There is no treason here. There is no un-American talk right now. This is saying, why in the blue fuck are we having a military parade for a person who said before he even became president that he wanted a military parade for him?
The other day I had this conversation online with a bunch of white women who, just couldn't understand that they were being racist. They were mad that I was calling them racist while they were being racist. And they kept saying that they wouldn't want any illegal immigrants or dreamers in the country because there were still homeless veterans all over the United States going hungry, committing suicide, not having anywhere to sleep, not having food to eat, and not being properly taken care of. Yet these same women, I followed them on Facebook, are all so happy about this, maybe military parade, right? Not counting that this is taking, 22 million, maybe more, to make happen. If it I don't
Not
even know
even,
what
that
the
doesn't
budget.
even account for the cost of planning it, of the security
The
along the
the
route.
damage after the fact,
I
because
mean-
70 ton tanks are going to be rolling down streets on either
Yeah,
Constitution
I don't think
Avenue
I've
or
ever seen a street
Pennsylvania
that
Avenue.
said, I mean, there's,
Yeah, I know.
there's no
Tanks
more than 4
allowed.
tons limit
Right?
gross volume weight, and people are going to be dragging missiles.
Yeah, and then these same people are the ones saying that this is a great idea, forgetting that veterans are still hungry,
Okay,
homeless.
And at the
Let
same
me-
time, Mike Pence had been saying how ridiculous it was that North Korea was having military parades to try and show off.
yeah,
And how stupid it
then
was.
what
And you're
is
not
Trump gonna
showing
do?
off.
Well, let me paint a picture for you.
Paint a picture. Paint
You
over.
get that brush out.
I'm gonna take you back about 2 years ago.
The good old days.
We had
And
President.
what if I told you there was a president of the United States who has his name plastered on buildings all over the place, and then subverts the FBI, who happens to be investigating him, and then he has tanks and missiles rolling through the streets with his soldiers?
Dude, people freaked out a few years ago because Obama was planning, well, not even Obama, it was the Department of Defense, was planning military maneuvers in Texas. People were thinking he was going to kidnap them and put them in FEMA camps and put them in jail just because they were doing straight up, just military practice and maneuvers, which are things that normally happen. Right? But that was under Obama. There was this whole thing that he was going to take you captive, put you in a FEMA camp, and kill you. And now we have this clown over here saying he wants a military parade, and we're all saying it's the most
And
American
again, he's not
thing he can
giving
do. It's America.
any reason for it. He's not
not.
saying that this is for
He's
this,
not.
that, or the other. He's saying, I want a parade. I want a parade. Give me a parade.
But apparently what had happened was at the January 18th meeting at the Pentagon, he literally compared it to Bastille Day.
Mhm.
Like, he said he really enjoyed it and thought it was really cool. And that's why he wants one. And like you said initially, I don't think he understands the significance behind Bastille Day, let alone maybe what it is.
I don't think he
But
understands the significance of
he thought
marching
they were really
soldiers down a street with tanks and all kinds of nonsense.
And it's not going to scare anyone, all right? If anything, it's just going to maybe move to make Kim Jong-un even crazier than he already is.
Okay.
Or, sorry, I'm getting
no,
angry
no, it's
here.
fine. I'm gonna Trump whisper again.
Okay.
Are you even on camera right now?
What is? I am.
You sure?
I shouldn't be. But what is
Got a face for radio.
What is wrong with some American pride? What is wrong with
What do you mean American pride?
What is wrong with just honoring
Build
the
something in
military?
America. Stop making your ties and your
Until-
steaks and your wine in China.
Pre-World War II, I'm pretty sure before 1944, 1943, we were the 17th ranked military in the world.
Pre-World
Right,
War
we still
I.
had a standing cavalry when the British, when the Brits had tanks and airplanes. I think we had like a non-existent air force till before World War I. So I don't tie the military and our military prowess to American pride. That's never been the case for us. It's been more about freedom, individual rights, acceptance. That to me is an American.
We honor the military on Memorial Day.
Maybe
and
that's when you
Veterans
have
Day.
it. Okay,
Yeah.
maybe that's when you have
So
it.
is it just like you don't want one more day of honoring the military?
But that's not what it
like
is.
We do. We
He's
put
Trump
fireworks
whispering.
I know.
in the sky.
It's about honoring you, Donald. That's what it's about. It's about you.
I mean, is it or is it about the military?
No,
It is-
you're going to say it's
If it was about the
military.
military, then on top of this parade, they'd be walking around asking for donations to support veterans' causes. There would be veterans marching in this parade. There
But
would
we
be.
don't know that that's not going to happen.
We
yet.
do know that's not going to happen because he went to the Pentagon and the DoD is planning this. You don't put non-military
Well, the
folks
army
in a
got put
parade.
in. The army got put in charge of it, but still haven't seen anything about veterans.
Yeah, I mean, they don't put non-military personnel in a military parade surrounded by tanks and missiles and all that kind of fun stuff. And if you're talking about the amount of fuel that's going to be used, the damage that's going to be caused to streets, not that I wasn't just in Philadelphia and saw what 5 million people marching through a street can do, but when we're talking about using government, taxpayer money to fund a military parade for no reason, nothing that we've done at this moment deserves one. I mean, I could understand it if we were doing it on Memorial Day or Veterans Day or
That'd be
July
cool.
4th or something
So
like
it's
that.
the day that's the problem.
It's not just the day that's the problem. It's the optics of it. It's the reason why he asked for it.
Yeah.
And it's the news that's out there. It's the proof that he said he wanted something like this even before he became president.
but
he's not doing this to promote any causes except for his own name, so that people can see him standing up there overseeing troops like he's Joseph Stalin and Kim Jong-un just watching down. Look at my soldiers as they march past me, turning their heads up and saluting, as if this is some kind of a military dictatorship. that we are not. We are not supposed to be a military dictatorship. We are not supposed to be a country that pushes people around, even though we have the most powerful army in the world. We don't need that. We don't, and just showing off makes us look even worse. It's just like if you were in high school and you see somebody showing off, you know why they're doing it. You don't think that they're cool because they're doing it. But there are plenty of people who do watch this TV show host, now president, and think, wow, he's so cool. Look at what he's doing. He's making us look great, but he's not. He's making us look like damn
America
fools.
Being so cool.
America is cool, but America is not its military.
Look,
America is not its president. America is the people that
like
live
what
here.
you're doing now because, and this is exactly where my depression comes from this past week. That will be the spin. It's going to become that. It's going to become the left hates the military. The left is un-American. The left doesn't like the flag. The left doesn't, want to say the Pledge of Allegiance. The left burns the flag, stands on it. They're the ones taking knees. Blah, 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 blah. All I want to do is showcase our military, stand up for our troops, stand up for our veterans. We just passed a spending bill that increases military spending. This is what we're doing. And that narrative will win the day. And that sucks. Because we all know that is not the truth.
While at the
He's
same,
doing it for all the reasons you just said, Joe.
At the same time that this is happening, Jim Mattis, I believe Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis, has changed. Yeah, Secretary of Defense General. He's got so many titles. Has changed American military policy, our national defense strategy, to quote, the great power competition, not terrorism, is now the primary focus of U.S. national security. We're sending Marine units to South and East Asia. These are called Marine Expeditionary Units. They are mobile.
Oh, like the British expeditionary.
Except that this is America, so they're far more advanced and have tons more money.
No, I'm just saying, but what the
they are 1,000 to 2,000 troops strong, amphibious units that can survive for 7 months at sea, can be deployed anywhere. They're usually used for disaster relief, or they've been sent into Iraq and other semi-war zones. But we are now bolstering our military presence in South and East Asia ahead of a possible nuclear showdown with North Korea, showing off for Vladimir Putin, sticking our thumb in Chinese eyes, and showing our allies in South Korea and Japan that we still care and we're still going over there, following up on Barack Obama's pivot towards Asia from the Middle East. But we're talking about a parade at the same time we're talking about, on the DL. I mean, it's reported, but nobody's talking about it because of this parade. We've always talked about how Donald Trump uses something to hide what's actually happening on the other side. Now we're sending more and more troops. We've already got 50,000 troops in Japan, 39,000 or so in South Korea. Don't even know what we have in the Philippines and Taiwan, Australia, all the rest of the countries that are over there. And we're building up forces over there because the Chinese are trying to extend their boundaries by building islands and by building aircraft carriers. And the Russians are like, we don't need North Korea, sending 24 million refugees into China because we need to sell them oil and stuff. We're talking about that not only is the American economy overheating and possibly bursting, but we're talking about that we've now doubled our military spending. We're giving more and more to them, and they don't know what to do with it. They're just saying, okay, can we just have something for $50 billion? Give me a jet. I'll take one of those. Give me like 14
I believe
missiles.
We have a few jets that cost us a few million that aren't being used because they were
and a lot of them didn't even work.
No, they didn't work.
They just bought them.
This is the military-industrial complex, though, right? Like
Eisenhower, you warned us.
The military sort of exists because it's good business. It keeps their base employed, and so you continue to produce things. And if you make something, you got to use it. So you go on military excursions around the world, and then you sell the stuff to Saudi Arabia right after passing a law that says we can sue Saudi Arabia for causing 9/11. But speaking of spending money we don't have, these things happen. Rand Paul seemed pretty pissed off about a bill that just passed overnight. Did you know that the government was shut down for about 3 or 4 hours? Yeah, I thought it was 8 hours. No, I think it was about, because he pushed it to just past midnight.
1 o'clock.
And then Donald Trump signed the bill around like 5 in the morning. He was up watching Fox anyway. Well, in a case of maybe my shit does stink, Rand Paul had a message for the Congress. I think we should listen to this message. Let's hear this thing. We're using this with rights, correct? Maybe. Yeah, whatever. He's a public figure. Exactly.
He is.
is to put people on the spot. I want people to feel uncomfortable. I want them to have to answer people at home who said, how come you were against President Obama's deficits, and then how come you're for Republican deficits? Isn't that the very definition of intellectual dishonesty? If you were against President Obama's deficits and now you're for the Republican deficits, isn't that the very definition of hypocrisy? People need to be made aware. Your senators need to answer, people from home, they need to answer this debate. We should have a full-throated debate. My amendment says this simply: we should obey the budget caps. What are budget caps? These are limits we placed on spending, both military and non-military. We placed them in 2011, and guess what? For a year or two, government actually shrunk. But now government's taking off, and this new stimulus of deficit spending will be as big as President Obama's stimulus. Don't you remember when Republicans howled to high heaven that President Obama was spending us into the gutter, spending us into oblivion? And now Republicans are doing the same thing. And so I ask the question, whose fault is it? Republicans? Yes. Whose fault is it? Democrats? Yes, it's both parties' fault. You realize that this is the secret of Washington. The dirty little secret is the Republicans are loudly clamoring for more military spending, but they can't get it unless they give the Democrats welfare spending. So they raise all the spending. It's a compromise in the wrong direction. We should be compromising in the direction of going towards spending only what comes in. And yet this goes on and on and on. You will hear people say, well, the military is hollowed out. We have not enough money for our military, and yet we doubled the amount of money we spend on the military since 9/11/2001.
LeVar, one of our hosts from one of our other shows from On the Real, says Rand Paul is spitting bars.
Well, now he's got Republicans and Democrats both all up in his grill because they knew that he was. They say that he can't get anything done. He never gets anything done with these speeches. But he talked and talked and talked until the midnight deadline for the spending bill, and he went past midnight. He had Corbyn walked out of the room. You know, you have people like Mitch McConnell just like, what the hell's this guy doing? Like, this is not going to work. But he's not really a Republican. He's a libertarian, just like Bernie Sanders, not really a Democrat. He's an independent.
He just caucuses with them.
Caucuses with them. I mean, we're talking about the spending that we're going right now has a projected by the budget office that by 2027 we will be running an annual deficit of $2 trillion a year. That's 100
interest rates.
That is 105% of our debt to income ratio. And I have always considered myself socially liberal but fiscally conservative as politically. You don't spend the money that you don't have. I have a credit card. I understand that sometimes I make a big purchase and I pay it off a little bit over time, but I'm not spending 105% of my yearly income just on debt. Just on debt. We're not talking about the actual spending that we have to do. I mean, right now we are $20 trillion in debt. Like,
Hey,
what do you? I mean, what is that? What number is that even?
You know how you solve that problem? With a tax cut.
Yes, give $1.5 trillion back, then ask for $1.5 trillion in infrastructure spending, then ask for $25 billion for a wall, $24 million for a refrigerator, $150,000 to pay your porn stars to be quiet.
It's 130, but you know, inflation.
Inflation, adjusted for inflation. I mean, honestly, the U.S. economy, the inflation rate is going to start looking like Bitcoin futures. It's like I just made $100 today, and at the end of the day, that I need $120 to have the same buying power.
This again goes to the theme of hypocrisy, right? Doesn't it?
It does.
I mean, 800 million over 10 years was what Obama was asking for in 2009.
Right.
These guys are going, way superseding that, and they were going crazy back then. And that just goes to show that the Republican Party for the last 2 decades has been the party that claims to be fiscally conservative when they're in the minority. But as soon as they're in the majority, then they're spending for everything that they want. They don't want to spend on Medicare or Medicaid or feeding the homeless or redistributing wealth to the lowest. and people that needed the help, they're all about increasing the deficit and
But
military spending
Here's what they're
and
gonna
redistributing up the chain.
They're going to try to balance the budget, but it is on the backs of
The workers, the middle class, of course.
Look, when Obama was president, 2011.
I don't like the term lower class, but
what Rand Paul was just talking about, 2011 Budget Control Act, it capped spending
at 560.
And now they've just blown through that cap by about $300 billion for the military and for domestic programs because they needed the Democrats to be on board. I mean, they passed it
71-28.
Yeah, with a large majority, which it was not the same majority that passed the tax cut.
Nope.
On a side note, too, Rand Paul did vote for that $1.5 trillion tax cut.
I was going to say, but I didn't want to take it.
I appreciate that.
And this is the problem.
Hypocrisy. I know that the title of the show is the motto for the Olympics at the moment, but the real,
black and blue.
I think the official title will include something about the genuine and arbitrary hypocrisy that we are experiencing from not just the people we elect, but the people that we elect appoint, and the people around us, our friends, our family, who tell you to save your money and to don't go out and buy that purse or don't go out and buy those shoes that you want. Don't go out and spend money on fancy dinner. And at the same time, they'll vote for a president, they'll vote for a senator and a congressman or congresswoman that is willing to spend our children's and our children's futures into the ground so that they can have a wall, so that they can kick out immigrants, so that they can have a president that has a military parade down Pennsylvania Avenue that he doesn't deserve, that we don't need, that doesn't make us look good, and only serves to bolster the viewpoint that he wants to be looked at as a big hulking mass of a person.
Okay, so I think this perfect.
Sorry, just one. LeVar has been.
I agree with what LeVar just said. In a small way, I think that would be kind of an awesome thing to have a Rand Paul, Bernie Sanders ticket. Because that's the best of everything.
But their
the problem is
politically
they strangle each other.
Yeah, they're just not.
And Rand Paul comes out with these speeches that these common sense speeches once in a while. But if you look at the rest of what he does and his voting record, I do not think you would like a Rand Paul. So I like the speech.
Maybe Rand Paul vice president, Bernie Sanders president.
And even within that speech, he's clearly showing his hypocrisy again because of what Joe just mentioned. He didn't vote against the tax bill, which increased the deficit. So where was he being a deficit hawk back then?
Rand Paul is also the guy when he was running for president, one of his campaign ads was going out to the shooting range with a AK-47 and shooting up the Affordable Health Care Act. Or the tax bill.
Was that him?
That was Rand Paul, yeah.
No, it wasn't. I thought it was somebody else.
100% was
It sounds like something he would do.
So
on top of that hypocrisy, I mean, you're talking about this $25 billion you're asking for the wall, this proposal that he's putting up to now find a way to make Mexico pay for it. The Trump administration, and just like the Trump Corporation, is trying to use extortion and basically racketeering to steal the money from immigrants sending remittances back to Latin America, Mexico, and the Caribbean. The money they send back, he wants to put a fee on it for the money that they send back. He wants to increase the cost of getting a green card by $2,500 because they interviewed a couple people, most of them from India, that said, yeah, we'd be willing to pay more for a green card if it expedited the process. Basically saying that if you've got the money for it, yeah, you can buy yourself an American citizenship, or that if you're here and you're sending money back, this is how they're getting around it. They say if you are here illegally and you're sending money back as a remittance, Western Union, you're mailing it, a check or whatever, that the international transfer would incur a fee to the bank, so the bank would then take the money out of you. But if you filed taxes, you'd get that money back as a tax refund, but most illegal immigrants do not file tax returns. They pay taxes and they pay into the economy in other ways, but they don't file actual tax returns, which, on a side note, I've looked around a couple times, and I'm pretty sure there's no actual law that forces you to file tax returns. But the point is, it's through extortion that he's trying to get it. And even if you do that, the projection is it would only raise about $7.4 million per year in remittance fees for a $25 billion wall. We're talking, I mean, I don't have a calculator right in front of me, but to pay for a $25 billion wall was $7.5 million in fees sent back from...
I'd have to look into everything you just said.
Everybody slow down. Mexico's going to pay for the rest. So it balances itself.
I'd have to check out everything else you just said right now, but I mean, that doesn't sound that bad. Not the green card part. That's not cool. But the charging remittances, I mean, Is that bad?
Well,
No,
because
but
they're
what
not
if-
going to charge a remittance to companies that send their money overseas. They're not going to send.
Yeah, but that's a whole different topic, right? And isn't that the problem right now within government? We're tying topics into other topics, conceding points just to get one, and then like, why can't we just tackle an issue for what it is and then move on to another issue? I'm not saying you're wrong, but why are we tying that into immigration?
Well, because they
and
wouldn't
that's
be.
what we're
The
doing
thing
now.
is,
Okay, well, let
okay,
me
but
ask you a
because they
question.
wouldn't be charging remittance on money that you send to Canada. They wouldn't be charging remittance.
Oh,
if you're
so
sending money to-
okay.
We're talking
So
about
this is not
just
an
to
overall-
Mexico, Latin America, and the
which is
Caribbean.
like I said, I had to check into
Okay,
what you're
yes.
saying.
so-
I didn't know. Okay.
So it's racist. Okay, now the thing is, let me ask you a question. By your logic, Jay Martinez, why tie the DACA and the Dreamer thing to the spending bill? Deal with one thing and then deal with another.
I first of all don't think right now what happened this past week. I knew it wasn't going to happen. I started that from the beginning, so I had no
But you said that
illusions
they
it was going to
gave
happen.
up ground and they lost.
They
Maybe
gave
they're
up ground that
maybe they're
last
just thinking
time.
like you, and they want to separate.
I see what you
things.
did there. I see what you did there.
Do you now? Explain.
I think the last time we shut down the government was the only time that we could have forced our hands, only because right now we don't control any aspect of government, right? And a government, no one likes a government shutdown. I know that you're one to think that Trump would have played chicken till he crashed. I don't agree. I think Trump at some point would have balked. Maybe he could have crashed, and then after the crash, been like, okay, I'm willing to fix it. But that's the last chance I think the Dems had before November of this year to really push the Republicans. Right now, we're all caught up in debating. Okay, we're going to debate the issue. We get that much closer. They're not going to pass anything.
Okay, well,
and now we have 800,000 people up in the air. When Trump when he said, okay, 1 point something, 1.8 million they would have given if we just increased this spending and that spending, giving him the wall. Right now, we just gave him almost everything he wanted except the wall, and we didn't get anything back. And I would have given him the wall. At this point, give him the wall.
Let's not forget about the...
Never give up, never surrender.
Balance of the million people who didn't sign up because they were lazy.
Because they were, yeah. And
Now,
what was that
but-
decided that again?
John Kelly.
John Kelly, yeah.
He's batting 1,000 this week. But I disagree with you because I don't think that the Republicans want to go into the midterm elections without having dealt with this DACA thing, because it will fall on them. And again, if a deal is not worked out on DACA, like, it's not going to fall on the Democrats, because you can't put it on the Democrats
Yes, it
now. Let me tell you why. You can't put it on the Democrats now because it's not like they're shutting down the government for it. So all the Democrats are fighting for is DACA. And if the Republicans are against it, people will know that they're against it. And I don't think they want that. Why? Because something like 80% of the country says that we should work out a deal for the DACA recipients.
Well, most Republicans are not for DACA, only the ones that live in border states. A lot of them are
That
not
may
running
be
for
enough
re-election.
to tip the tide.
You're right. Might be enough. But then you still have to get through the House, right?
Well, yeah, but
The House is a big hurdle. Like, we sometimes seem to want to shift focus.
If you can't get a veto-proof majority to pass anything, then the president really has the most power in these situations.
So you're saying that the fault would lie on him?
I agree mostly with Steve on the issue that he probably would have played chicken long enough because if you play chicken long enough, even if you crash, it's usually the bigger car that comes out okay. Usually the car with the most airbags, and the White House has far more airbags than Congress does. We're talking about 535 little cars trying to crash into a semi-truck, which is run by one executive. We're talking about a person who still has the authority to run the government, even if the government is shut down. We're talking about a president who is perfectly willing to let that happen.
Power.
We're talking about a president who's perfectly willing to let that happen because it's the controlling of the executive branch.
Okay.
It's nice and easy. Everything flows down. When you have Congress, it's like you have to get a majority to do this, and the other. You can't get something brought to the floor. We can't open the government for this, that, and the other thing. And this is what allows dictators to run their government.
All right, but a couple of weeks ago, right, we had them on camera. All right, we had the Democrats proposing to pass a bill that would have allowed the continued funding for our military to make sure they got paid, to make sure that everyone overseas was taken care of. And we had Mitch McConnell on camera saying, I will not let that go onto the floor for a vote. All right, so if you're all talking about optics, which is really what our government kind of comes down to now, it's just, the tweet, whatever the story of the day is, the video that comes out that day, right? The Republicans are winning that day in and day out. And maybe it's not the best thing to close the government. Maybe you're both right. Maybe Trump would have just waited long enough and then nothing would have happened and he could have taken advantage of it.
He would have been the only one in charge.
I don't think it would have been that way. But okay, let's say you're right. But
We
then
are.
what
I
other
do like when you say
tactic
that.
do the Democrats have going into November aside from a government shutdown or at least a threat of one?
I mean, there's
And
not
then if
gonna be a
nothing
shutdown
passes-
because they just signed that.
No,
thing
I know
for,
exactly
like,
for a
2
year.
years.
That's what I'm saying. So now it's gone.
No, I feel
That's
like
why I don't think
but I feel
anything
like
is
you're
gonna
looking at it
happen.
as if the Democrats have any sort of real, genuine power. We're talking about they are out of power in every branch
Okay,
of
and
government.
but we need November 2018, right? We
Yeah.
need that to kind of at least win one, either the Senate or the House, hopefully both. I just don't see that now happening. I feel like
Okay,
they
let
had
me-
more of a momentum
let
going
me
back a
put
month
it- let me
ago,
put it to you
and now
another
they've
way.
lost that momentum.
Even if what you say happens and they don't work out a deal on DACA,
Yeah, you're
and the
saying that the
Democrats
Republicans will
say-
get blamed.
they will get blamed. But here's the thing: if the Democrats say, "Hey, you want us to figure out a deal on DACA, put us in control of the Congress," that's an amazing
Exactly.
thing
Okay.
to run on in November.
Because it's not like
Okay.
there was going to be any way to turn the House a month ago. You
Okay.
couldn't take votes from Republicans who know
On,
that they're not
on the
going
way
to do
here,
it.
I was talking to Joe about this and the whole Teflon Don thing, right? Anything that this guy does, we're always, oh, how can he get away with? I've come to grips with the fact that his base won't abandon him for anything. He could literally shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and not lose one of the single voters that voted
That's
on his
fine,
base,
but
right?
That he only has a third.
I get that. But who's to say that DACA is going to bring out all these people to come out and vote? A part of the left, and it's always a part I've had an issue with, is that the young people, and sometimes minorities, both black and Hispanic, don't come out in droves to vote when they need to, especially in the midterms. They come out mostly during presidential elections. They came out in droves for Obama, but they came out less in 2012 than in 2008, and they came out less for Hillary this past election in 2016 than in 2012.
My friend.
So do you really think it's all these people are going to come out for
Two
DACA?
words.
People like to care. They
Tide
like to
Pods?
fake care.
2 words.
Tide Pods?
Doug Jones.
Yeah, but Doug
Okay,
Jones still
but come on.
basically is caucusing with Republicans because he doesn't want to lose his seat in 2020.
I
Yeah,
get that,
but
who
you
put
can't
it,
compare
the people
that.
that put Doug Jones in office are the people that you say typically don't come out to vote.
I don't find that.
What was the percentage
Yeah.
of the black vote in Alabama?
It was high.
It was very,
Very
high.
high.
It was
Very
it was
high.
like
Black
general
women,
election.
too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was general election numbers.
Okay.
So again, people may come out just because they hate Trump so much. And
I think people don't care enough, which is why we have Trump. And then I feel, for example, your example right now, and I'm not trying to say that it was just the black community in Alabama that's self-serving. I'm talking about every other subgroup, sub-minority of the bigger part of the Democratic Party is self-serving. They came out because they had a clear bigger races running in their state that said the crap he said about black people, right? Can we count on all those black people from the Midwest, maybe from the South, from the inner cities to come out for the Dreamers?
I think
The same way, do you think black people think that
but
the
it's not-
Hispanics
it's-
come out and
it's-
drove to vote for mainly
2018
black
is
issues?
not just for the Dreamers, though. That is one thing.
You're saying that it's a response to Trump, right?
I think
that
it
you're
will
hoping.
be. It will be a response to the Dreamer situation.
That's
it will be
what
a response
midterms
to
are
Trump.
supposed to be.
It
I
will be a
understand,
response
but
to-
I think
and
we're
historically-
underplaying
historically,
Trump supporters
I'm just
in
saying-
2018.
I'm saying historically.
You're right. The party in
when-
power loses.
Right, and they have all 3 branches of government.
Yes.
Historically, it
They're
just
going to
says
bound
that
to
they
lose
will-
one at least.
Exactly.
But okay.
Yeah, it's not going to be a Supreme Court.
And
I'll
I
tell you
still
that much.
and I still agree. I still think that we're going to take one. I'm just saying that 2-3 months ago, I literally believed that we had a legit chance to take both the Senate and the House come 2018. I think we lost the House.
But how much of that is? I think the House is still in play. But and
24
how much of that
seats.
might
That's all
be
you need.
played.
24 seats.
How much of that is? Because remember, there are like 30 people resigning.
Okay,
Right.
so
and one more thing. How much of that is we? I don't consider. I'm technically a part of the millennial generation, but I don't consider myself as such because I'm right on the edge. I'm an old man, and I'm cranky.
Like, you may sit on the Jedi Council,
you
but
are
we do
not
not grant you
on
the
the
rank
edge.
of master.
Now,
All right, Anakin.
My question is, how much of that is just the need for instant gratification?
what,
right?
DACA?
That's
No,
what
no,
we
no,
are.
no,
We're
no,
in
no, I
instant
mean-
gratification mode for like an overdrive for the past
No,
year and a half.
what I'm saying is like because like we're not in November yet, so to lose hope and faith, what is leading you to be less optimistic than you were, other than Trump is still in office?
It's cynicism. I think it's the same thing that is affecting him as is affecting millions of people all over the place, because you see that no matter how many bad things keep happening, that no one is stepping up. No one is rising.
November is
Okay.
the chance.
No one
to
is
step
rising
up,
to
though.
the occasion because
yes,
even though November
yes,
is happening,
okay.
you still had people like Joe Kennedy who got up and he did his response speech, and then everybody was talking about him, and then they stopped. Everybody was
Yes,
talking about
yes.
Oprah, and then they
Thank you,
stopped.
thank
Everybody's
you.
talking about The Rock, and then they
And
stopped.
who holds that
I'm glad they
narrative
stopped
day
talking
in
about The
and
Rock.
day out? Trump. Right? Who holds that narrative? And again, I mean, I want to make a point right now, but I want to go back to Joe Kennedy real quick. I wasn't here last week, and I couldn't get it in last week. So a lot of people made the argument, and I couldn't really argue it, that the Democrats and the left, for all their yelling and yammering and posturing about minorities and blacks and browns and blah, 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 who do they put out to officially respond to Trump's State of the Union?
Pasty ass white boy from the 1960s.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And again, they had Kamala Harris, Cory Booker. They
Okay,
have Julian Castro.
Just-
Why?
I'm gonna speak for the Democrats for a second.
Okay.
You're a Democrat whisperer now.
Just for a moment.
we need a blue and a red light, so we know.
You do realize that whoever does that response speech, it never goes well for them.
Of course.
Right? So why would
And that is why
Then
last
why
week's
have one
episode
at
I
all?
said I don't get the point. Did you not even watch it? Because that's exactly what I said. I was like, well, I don't understand. Like even when Obama was
Did I just
president,
sell
when George
myself out?
Bush was president,
Nobody
I don't.
wants
There's
to
no
do
point
that.
to a response speech because the president's giving you a State of the Union.
Hey,
but
Nikki
I do
Haley
understand
gave one, and
it.
look where she's at now.
But I do understand it because I mean, when the president accuses people that don't applaud him as traitors and treasoners, and he says Democrats don't love America and they're un-American because they didn't applaud my State of the Union address, then you do need someone to clarify. Just like we need the Democratic memo to be released against the Nunes memo, despite the fact that it's probably not going to say anything more than the Nunes memo did, there needs to be due process. There needs to be two sides, and every bit of an argument needs to
But
be
that's
heard,
not
'cause you
the
can't just go
moment, and
telling
that's not the
people.
time to do it, though. And if historically it hasn't boded well for whoever has given the response, then why continue? Isn't that insanity?
Well, here's the thing.
I mean, why?
No, you
And then if
do-
you're putting your best foot forward as a Democrat today, you put one of your party elders up there, or at least who you think.
No.
Just to play off of what Joe was saying, though, that's one of my feelings right now, is that we're months away from a midterm election, right? 2.5 years away from another presidential election. The Democrats haven't really put anyone up there to lead the party. Bernie is still looked at as a de facto leader, and that guy has no chance going into 2020, as much as I wish that he did. So, I mean,
Yeah,
that
but
is
at
where
what
my
point-
dissatisfaction comes
but
from.
Again,
That's where I feel.
At what point did we know Obama was going to be the next president? Like, how close to it did
What-
we know? 3
Oh,
years
dude,
out is a
I
very
knew back
long
in
time.
2005 he was gonna be president. I promise you. Like,
I know he had a picture of him up on our dorm
Thank
wall.
you. No, I knew. Like after he gave that speech at the
Okay,
Democratic
but-
National Convention,
But
game.
even by that time frame, that's
Yeah.
still around now. So to say that they haven't put anyone
2004
up-
to 2008. Well, I guess yeah, he started running
2005.
in
You said
5.
2005.
Well,
to
he gave the
2008.
Democratic National keynote in 2004 for Kerry
But you said you knew he was going to be president in 2005.
after the speech. After the speech. So it was like
So
mid
my
2004.
point is,
Mid
There is
2004.
still time for someone to come forward.
There's
and
just, I don't see
That's
it.
and
agreed.
also maybe it's not. If you're looking for another Obama, it's not going to happen.
No, of course I'm not looking
right?
for another Obama,
And-
but I'm looking for another leader. Every party needs a leader at least,
Or
right?
maybe
not the best leader, but a
maybe-
leader. We have none.
Maybe
We're talking about
the
two old white
party
guys,
needs-
Biden and Bernie.
They're talking about them right now, right?
Right
But
now.
Again, I don't know if we want to be in a place where it's like the Democratic Party can only put forward, like if you're white, they've lost the argument. Like
Okay,
we
I
don't,
see
we
that.
don't really want.
No,
to be
you're
there.
right.
We want someone that stands for.
That's not what I meant, but you're right.
principles.
If it came out that way, you're right. Not what I meant. But
And by
Optics are everything now.
Furthermore, if I was a Kamala Harris or a Cory Booker,
you wouldn't want to do it.
exactly, or a Kirsten Gillibrand because you know she wants to run.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put myself out there like that. Think about the people who have done this historically. We've had Marco
Nikki
Rubio
Haley did it
once.
Marco Rubio did it. What's this guy's name from Louisiana, the ex-governor? He ran for president,
yeah,
the
yeah,
Indian
yeah,
guy. I
I
forgot
know.
his name.
Oh,
Bobby Jindal.
Bobby Jindal. He did
Bobby
one
Jindal
year.
did it.
I used to pay more attention when it was the Republicans
yeah.
giving the response.
But my point is, it's never anybody that ends up. It's like the kiss of death.
Maybe.
When you do it.
But
so,
then why keep doing it?
Because because you don't want the opposition
To get the last
to
word.
control the narrative.
But he still is. And that's
fine.
That's what
But you
gets me
still
about
have
Trump.
to push. If that's the argument, why resist at all?
You're right.
Well, because
and I'm not saying for that either. I'm just saying I feel a little defeated at the moment. Can you let me be?
No, I can't.
Well,
Let me
what
be right
Jay
now,
is saying is
all right?
it goes exactly to the things that are just happening on a regular basis. You know, where they won't release a Democratic memo, and even though they said they were going to go
and
to,
the clear
through
hypocrisy
the
of
exact
that, and
same
no
process.
one is going to say
so
shit
now
about
it's been sent back to the Intelligence Committee to be revised for possibly exposing too much national.
But the
security
reason that they're
interest.
exposing more than they did in the GOP one was
They had to counter it. They had to
they had to counter
explain.
the bullshit.
Just like with this $100,000
But
bit
no one's
about
gonna talk about
the
It's not gonna mean
NSA
anything.
equipment that was stolen.
Yeah.
So they're saying that the American spies tried to pay $100,000 for dirt on Trump. That is not true. They tried to pay $100,000, a payment 1 out of 10 for about $1 million to get back stolen NSA equipment. Stolen equipment. They were trying to buy it back and at the same time sting the guys that were selling it to them so that they could arrest them. Russian oligarchs that said, we're going to give this stuff back to you. Also, we have some dirt on Donald Trump, some bank records, some stuff like that, some conversations. We're just going to throw that in there for free, basically. We're going to throw it in on top, sweeten the deal. And we're like, but we're just here for the NSA equipment. Like, no. Here, take some of this dirt. Take some of this dirt with you. And then they canceled. They stopped. They went to Berlin with a suitcase full of money. They met at a 5-star hotel in Berlin. They tried to do the exchange. They'd been monitoring for 5 months the plane traffic. They've been monitoring the oligarch, I forget what the name was, going to Vienna in Austria to meet up with his mistress. They knew everything that they were doing because they wanted this equipment back. This is dangerous equipment to have in Russian hands, and they wanted it back. They were going to get it back, and at the end, they find out these guys were also going to offer some dirt on Donald Trump. But that's the only thing that people are talking about because the last bit of the narrative was Republicans got to talk about it. But Donald Trump got to talk about it. He didn't care about the fact that we were talking about stolen equipment that could possibly be used to hack things, even though we've just proved that the Russians hacked voter rolls in states in 2016.
And they're doing it now in other countries as well. It's been proven. But look, can I backtrack just a second because I forgot to make a point I wanted to make. So a lot of my despair this week comes from an article I read. I forgot who it was from, an opinion piece.
Stop reading. It's only going to hurt you.
And their statistics were pretty straightforward. And if anything, I'll share it later on social media. After the 2010 midterms, the Tea Party took a stranglehold on the GOP, the extreme right party, and they made changes. Not overwhelming changes. The moderates are still there, the elites are still there, but they made a stand and they made themselves be heard, and they got some people elected. The left side of the Democratic Party has not done that yet.
Okay, stop. Hold on.
Stop. Collaborate and listen. All right, what's up?
Let me ask you a question.
Ask away.
Would you not argue that the far left has taken over the Democratic Party with the Me Too movement? I mean, they just pushed out Al Franken. This is what the Tea Party did. They pushed out people, and
I think the next thing is actually going to be the Tide Party.
But there you go.
The Blue Tide Party.
They didn't just get them taken out. I like that. They didn't get them just taken out. They got people put in place, right?
We will see in November. How are they going to get people put in?
But the people running right now aren't extreme left people or anything. They're pretty.
Well, you have the primaries coming up in June, so that's when you're going to start seeing everything.
And who's really going out? But right now, the favored people are establishment people.
The people that
they're not anyone that
will run, even if they're establishment, they are going to have to toe the far left line
until
or they will get pushed out.
They win the primary. Just like Hillary Clinton did it.
No,
until she won the nomination,
after November.
And then she pivoted her ass from freaking universal health care all the way back.
That's the same argument. So I'd argue the same thing is happening on the left.
I just don't think it's happening strong and quick enough. Again, and that scares me before 2018.
That is the instant gratification thing.
Well, look, so you're talking about since Donald Trump was elected, there's been 36 seats that have flipped over, most of which are in deep red territory we never thought we had a chance in. And they've been flipped over to progressive Democrats, not just moderate Democrats, progressive liberal Democrats have taken these, whereas Republicans on the same side, on the other side of the coin, have flipped 3 seats. And we're talking about seats that were in competition anyway. Yeah. Now we have the Supreme Court who refused to issue a stay with the Pennsylvania gerrymandering case, but they're also listening to Wisconsin and Maryland's case.
Was that the federal Supreme Court or was that the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court?
The State Supreme Court of Pennsylvania issued a ruling. The Republican Party petitioned the U.S. Supreme Court for a stay to say that they can't do that, and the U.S. Supreme Court said no.
They could.
They let the court stand.
I thought it just went all the way up to the Pennsylvania.
At the same time, it's because they are also reviewing Wisconsin and Maryland's gerrymandering cases. So they probably looked at it as like, we don't need a third one on the docket. We can only handle like 60 cases a year. So now the Republicans in Pennsylvania are just trying to impeach the judges for doing their job after telling him you have to fix these things, when you've got reports that about 50-50 when voters went Republicans and voted for Democrats, and yet Republicans control 75% of the state house, even though the governor is a Democrat.
Okay.
So you've got this idea that if we don't win, we take it, and if we can't take it, then we steal it. And that's exactly how they're.
Okay. And who's to stop them from stealing it then again in 2020?
It's supposed to be the people.
2018?
It's supposed to be the people that stood up, like he mentioned before with Tea Partiers, that stood up and said, no, we're not going to lose our conservative ideals. We're not going to lose our party. And now look where the Republicans are right now. They're not a conservative party. They squashed the Tea Partiers.
When the Democrats do this when they're in control and the Republicans crying
Cry
about how
fucking
terrible
foul.
it is.
Yeah.
Well, luckily with social media around, we have a lot more opportunity to
before we
record
get
them.
too much off topic, though, so let's just quickly cover, I guess, what the spending bill gave both parties. Because, again, this is a bipartisan bill. This had a lot of support from both the House and the Senate Democrats.
You know what else is a bipartisan bill that passed with a lot of support?
What?
Sanctions on Russia that are not being enforced by the executive branch, and nobody's complaining about that. Even
Are we adding topics?
Because it goes off of DACA, because every single Republican said, how dare Barack Obama try to be a dictator and not enforce the law? This is the law. You enforce our laws.
You see?
We pass a bill.
Hypocrisy.
Exactly.
It should be the title of the show this week, I think.
It probably will be.
Plain and simple, just hypocrisy.
Hypocrisy Now, yeah.
Ooh, I like that.
All right, new title for the show, Hypocrisy Now.
And it happened.
Instead of Citius, Altius, Fortius.
Which
faster,
you could explain. There
faster,
you go.
higher, stronger.
The
It's the
Olympic
motto of
motto.
the Olympics.
I thought that was a Kanye West song.
No, Hypocrisy Now.
That's
That
probably
is
where
the
he
title
got
of
it
this
from.
episode.
That damn genius. But and then what happens to the Dreamers now?
I guess they stay
You
asleep.
know where?
Because it's not like they're going to just round up 1.8 million people and send them across a border.
No.
I mean, we're talking about 1.8 million
He's been rounding up people, though.
Yeah, they've been rounding up like 100 people.
But, I
week,
want to make a
people
fair
next week.
point. Obama rounded up a fair amount of people in his
did.
administration.
He did.
A lot of criminals, though.
Yeah, most of them were criminals.
You're
We're talking
right.
about
You're
now
right.
in Illinois, there
Doctors,
is a two-term
engineers.
Army veteran. Two-term Army veteran
Serious?
who has lived here since he was 8 years old. He's going to be deported because the governor of Illinois would not sign a clemency on his drug conviction that he had when he left the military, got addicted to drugs, and had to sell or transport them for a friend who was giving him free drugs.
Hypocrisy.
Exactly.
Again.
This was a person who served
The
his
party
country,
of
who
the
got stuck,
military.
who didn't get taken care of after he left the military, who did whatever he could to survive to get the drugs that he thought he needed, which, of course, nobody should feel that way. But instead of granting him mercy, instead of showing a little bit of clemency for an Army veteran and allowing him to do that so that his lawyers can petition for citizenship because he served the military, they're not going to. They've got him locked up in a detention center in Wisconsin, and they're going to deport him back to Mexico where he hasn't been for like 30 or 40 years.
Also, I think it's important to point out that while we say, Obama did deport a lot of people who, were like violent criminals and things like that, I think that this administration looks at people, it looks at undocumented people as criminals.
They're criminals for the very fact that they're here.
Yes.
For no other reason.
In their
They
mind,
are.
Kind of
they
like being
are
arrested for
deported
resisting
criminals.
arrest.
Yes.
Like, what?
But you are breaking the law.
Yeah, of course. It's breaking the law, but at the same time, it's been said many times before, and even the Supreme Court has made rulings like this. The Bible has said things like this, and these aren't word for words, but if the law isn't right, then it isn't a right law.
Yeah.
If you make a law that says it's illegal to be brown, okay, it's the law. It's illegal to be brown, or illegal to be black, or illegal to be a Christian. It doesn't mean that you're now an illegal person. It means that someone has said that because they want it to be so. But
I'm only saying that because, again, if we want to tackle something, I think we have to go to the base of it.
Well, so
attack the foundation.
To your point, Joe,
just use my real name in public.
We are under no obligation to adhere to an unjust law.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that is true, but the second question that I guess Jay is asking is it unjust to say that if you cross the border illegally, that is that unjust to say that you are breaking the law?
It's not unjust, but I also get the way that you mentioned it before and the way the administration casts a light on it. not a criminal because you're breaking a law just by being in the country. You're a criminal because he's implying that you might be a racist or an MS-13 gang member,
Not a racist,
or
a
you're
rapist.
a rapist, or you're freeloading off of the
You're
government
mixing
without
up
giving
who's
back.
the rapist
and
and
the
who's the
rapist. So
It'd be Donald
I also do get what you mean. I get that, but then again, we're getting to technicalities, and they're not wrong.
No. But here's the problem. I think we do need to have like common sense conversations, right? So what are the rules around, like, how do you deal with people that overstay? Because let's be clear, and this is my big problem with the way we talk about this. We talk about immigration or illegal immigration as though it is only a thing that is happening with people crossing the border from Mexico.
Yeah,
That's
no.
not the case.
Yeah, not at all. Even statistically, it's not even
that
no.
come here are coming here from planes and overstaying
Saying their visas, and most of them were Asian the last 2 years.
We don't talk about it in that light. And until we can talk about it in that light, I kind of have to think that it is a fruitless conversation. So let's really have the conversation and talk about what the rules are for handling things like that. Because you cannot say that if I say I don't want the borders completely open for anybody to come here at any time and you don't have to do anything, then you cannot just say that makes you a cruel person.
Yeah.
I think what makes you a cruel person is, or what says a lot about you, I won't call you cruel, but it says a lot about you.
But what you do with the people here.
Well, yes, what you do with them once they're here,
Mm-hmm.
and when you only talk about it in terms of brown people coming across the border.
Yes.
Right?
Ronnie actually
makes
makes
talking about Irish people, and you start talking about Italians and Scandinavians and Eastern Europeans. When you start talking about them coming over here, then I'll know that this is a thing you really care about.
Trump may not be talking about it, but those communities are also being affected by it. I mean, that's kind of been on the news as well. And to me, I didn't think it happened that way. I thought it was going to be something mostly attributed, and it has been. I guess maybe we got to look into the statistics, but I'm sure it has been disproportionately more people of color. And Trump certainly speaks of it that way, but there have been other communities affected by these now, new policies of immigration under the administration. I never thought of it this way. Ronnie is saying that they're breaking federal law, not state law. I don't know how, that's another way I've never looked at it. The day that your boy called in, I forget his name. He had some very cool points to make. I forget.
Yeah. Jesus.
Jason. So what I had said that day, and again, this is not a fully thought out, I haven't written out a bill, but the way I see it is that if you're here in the country legally, you have broken a law. So you have to accept that you've broken a law. Now you got to figure out, you can't lump everyone in by that.
If I jaywalk, I've broken a law.
No, you're right.
Let's be clear.
Which is what I said to Joe too. It is the law. So I mean, how far do we have to go back to fix the whole issue? But if we're maintaining that it's illegal to be here the way that they are, forgetting to fix that law, okay, whatever. How long have you been here? Have you been working? Do you have a family? Have you broken any laws? Mm-hmm. If you've been a good person while you've been here, I think you have to pay back some back tax, a fee, because you did break a law, but you shouldn't be deported.
You weren't paying any taxes.
If you have been, then great. If you haven't, or forget taxes, just a fee. You still broke the law. You're getting to stay here. You're paying a fine. You're paying a fine or something that gives back, I guess, in a way, or appeases the people that say there should be something to be. And at the end of the day, are they really wrong? You are breaking a law. Now, if you've broken any laws here or abroad before coming here, you're out. Out. My opinion.
Okay, but now here's the problem with that.
If you serve in the military, if you want to come...
What if you're a refugee from Cuba or somewhere else, and in your state, in your country, they say you've broken a law?
Okay, but refugees are different than illegal immigrants, so you have to apply to be a refugee, right? You've been accepted here as a refugee.
You apply for asylum.
Asylum.
Political asylum.
And if maybe, let's say you don't. Let's say you come the illegal immigrant route and then you get caught, then have the chance to maybe apply for asylum. Then I don't know how that would work. And again, you see, we're getting you could get very intricate in this, right?
But I think people need to get intricate into
You're
it
right.
Instead of
right.
Fully open borders, or everyone that's here, or we just need to get out all the brown people.
Well, I'm not saying just brown or anything. I'm just saying anyone.
I'm saying we actually need to have the conversation instead of just jumping, on whatever side that we stand on this thing, because I think a lot of the time this gets talked about in an ideological way, and we actually don't think that there are actual human beings
behind the words we're saying. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So part of the Declaration of Independence.
Oh boy.
Here we go.
A couple pieces of it. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states for that purpose, obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others, to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries.
Signed Marty McFly.
Among the many different accusations the Declaration of Independence throws at the British Crown, these are things that for the entirety of our history we have always tried to stand against. And now people, again, in the modern version of these atrocities, are trying to stand against them. And you have a president who thinks himself a king, who thinks himself a mighty dictator with all powers, like some kind of a golden emperor. And we are now trying to stand up for it. And so, of course, he calls us treasonous. Of course, he says that we are traitors. Of course, he says that illegal immigrants are the problem because they're the easiest target to pick on.
Yeah,
of course, he says that black and brown people aren't right because the majority of this country is still not black and brown.
Of course, the majority of his followers are not.
And despite the fact that his own immigration history, his own last name has been changed, his wife is an immigrant who overstayed her visa and got married to him to stay in the country, his wife's parents don't have jobs, don't have qualifications that other people would say.
Migration.
Yeah, they came here through chain migration, quote unquote, even though that's not exactly what it is. It's family reunification. There are so many, not just hypocritical things, but just downright against the laws of nature, against the traditions and the customs that this country was established on. This is not established exactly. This was not established as a Christian nation. This was an established nation that happened to follow a lot of these Judeo-Christian rules and laws because that was 200 and some odd years ago, 260 some odd years ago. But
we were burning witches back then.
Exactly. And now he's saying that this is the biggest witch hunt in our history. He was like, we literally burned them before. We're just asking you to tell the truth. We just want to see your tax returns. We just want to see you act like an actual adult rather than a giant man baby with a powerful pen.
And small hands.
And very small hands. But this is not the country that we live in because there's too many people that were so angry that for 8 years we were not ruled by, but that we had a black man as a president. They were so angry that they weren't part of this 1% that gained all of this wealth. And they still think that because Donald Trump is president that somehow they're all going to get wealthy. Somehow they're all going to own private jets and they're all going to be able to own slaves again and drive giant pickup trucks with the Confederate flag wherever they go without anybody yelling at them.
Here's the Trump whisperer again.
Well, the point being, though, that if we live in a country that only allows for one point of view to be dominant at any one time, then that is basically a dictatorship. If we're being told that we are treasonous and we are traitors and that we are illegal just because we disagree with the way things are, and despite the fact that a majority of people want something the other way, then that is an authoritarian regime. Donald Trump did not win the popular vote. He does not have a mandate of the people to do the things that he wants to do or that he's proposing, but he does have a majority of people who are willing to kowtow to him, that are willing to lay down, surrender, and serve from their knees. And there are plenty of people who refuse to bend the knee. There are plenty of people who refuse to say that Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan are my leaders.
Until you bend the knee and you end up like Eddard Stark.
Yeah, but he didn't. And he only did it because he wanted to save his children, and look what it got him. It got him his head cut off because he gave in to the things like the Democrats giving in to Mitch McConnell, thinking that they're actually going to get a floor debate.
Well, he actually got his head cut off
after he gave
a
in.
Boy king
who
didn't know what the hell he was doing.
He should have just sent him to the wall, let him take the black, and not start a war with the North.
Yes.
I'm trying to catch up to you. You made me feel really bad about.
I'm on book 5 now.
I'm halfway through book 2. So
Okay.
I'm still a while to go.
You got a ways to go.
Yeah.
Well, so do we want to end up like North Korea? Do we want to end up
wondering how we're gonna get there.
having to join the U.S. hockey team with the Canadian hockey teams under a unity flag of a leaf and stars?
So I know you had a little bit to say about that.
A little bit, yeah.
Are we doing the Puerto Rico?
Yeah, I thought we were doing Puerto Rico now because I thought we were doing the
I know,
Philly
that's what I'm
thing.
saying. I had a little bit to say, but
that's all. Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, all right. So in the spending bill that was passed, there was a provision in it in which I don't know if it doubled or just gave more money to areas affected by hurricanes.
Hey, Jason joined us, by the way.
What up, Jason? We were just talking about you, man. Thank you for
It was
joining
all
in.
bad things. Don't rewind it.
Horrible things. And now they were good things. Anyway, so some of the provisions are that there, more money going to places affected by hurricanes. It has been a little over 150 days, almost 200 days, since Hurricane Maria devastated Puerto Rico. There are still parts of the island without water.
But they
There's
do
still
have
homes
paper
without
towels. They have lots of rolls of paper.
And they might
He
have
was
had...
going to start throwing cans of
I was
chicken.
just
You
gonna
know
say
they
that.
stopped him, right?
Yeah. And so basically it's been a long time that a lot of these people who are American by law have not had the help or assistance of the U.S. government. Now, to make things worse, right, these fiscally conservative Republicans, they awarded a contract to an Atlanta-based company called Tribute Contracting, who has a history of either not completing their work or just not being able to get it done because...
Were they friends of the Trump administration?
No, hear this. Friends, plural. No, this place is ran by one woman. One employee.
Well, that's half of the population of the people that are doing the electrical grid in Puerto Rico for $300 million.
Was in charge. She was awarded $156 million to a company owned by one woman.
You can't say
right?
Trump doesn't put women in high places.
Right, we can't say that. And she promised to give 30 million meals to families in Puerto Rico. They only ended up giving 1% of that, 50,000 meals. I forget who right now is, they wrote a letter. I will tell you right now. Representative Elijah Cummings and Stacey Plaskett have written, and that is a delegate from the U.S. Virgin Islands, so it's not actually a voting member of the House, but they wrote to the Oversight Committee Chairman, Trey Gowdy, on Tuesday to investigate this as to why it happened. Why would
Gowdy, Republican from South Carolina.
Yeah. Why would the government award a contract of this amount of money in a moment of need for an island? And basically just how it can happen. And I just want to bring it up in passing.
FEMA was doing it for far less and doing far more work, even though they weren't even doing that great of a job.
Exactly. And again, I just want to bring it up in passing because I really
what was the name of the company that they gave a $300 million contract
for
to
the electrical grid?
I
forget.
That had 3 employees.
Yeah, and then it got reneged back, so it doesn't really matter. But anyway, like you said,
that electric company had ties
to the Trump administration, to the energy department. I don't know. I haven't read anything about this woman having any ties, aside from the fact that she has been contracted by the DOD before. Didn't work out with them before. The Marines didn't work out with them before. So this woman clearly has a history of not being able to do what she claims to be able to do. And yet they hired her, awarded her this money in a moment of need for an island that is home to millions of American citizens, and they've just been ignored. And they're almost at 200 days, and they're still suffering. And I think it's an injustice. And we sit here day in and day out and talk about Rob Porter and affairs and the latest tweet. And I think at least we have to give some light to these people that are not being helped and our brothers and sisters down there. And, hopefully something happens, but it hasn't happened yet. And I don't know how much of it I'm helping by talking about it, but hopefully I'm just reminding people that, hey, it's still going on. And yeah, and just keep your eye on the ball. And I feel sorry for the people in Puerto Rico. We're praying for you. We're hoping for the best. And hopefully maybe, Reps Elijah Cummings and Stacey Plaskett can get to the bottom of this, because to me, it's just absolutely ridiculous.
You hope
that one person can get
despite the fact that you're
$156 million.
cynical anyway and think that there's no more hope left in the world. There's hope left in the White House, but she's just one person. Thank you.
Yeah.
But the problem is that with Puerto Rico, it's you have them. They're snubbing. They're like closing their eyes and pinching their nose and like, fine, here's some of the money. We can't just give it to Texas and Georgia and Florida and not give you anything. We'll look like complete assholes.
Yeah.
So they're just like, here, just take some of the, here's some of the crumbs off of the table. Like, go eat that or something. Like, just be quiet. Stop bitching. Just shh. But they're not, because people who are starving, people without electricity, people who cry when the power comes back on after a month because they've been living off of gas generators.
Children going to schools without electricity, while here people cry about a little bit of snow and ice and they're not going to schools.
No, but in Puerto Rico, you've got people that have been now going 3-4 months and will likely go several weeks longer. 5 months.
September.
And they will likely go several weeks longer without fully being restored to where they were, despite the fact that for all intents and purposes, Puerto Rico could be a state. It could be the 51st state. They sent a delegation to Washington to petition for statehood, and that's pretty much stalled at the moment because it's likely that if it became a state, there'd be 7 more electoral votes for a Democrat because that's what they think.
A bunch of new Democratic voters.
So the Republicans that are in charge right now do not want to see Puerto Rico recover. They don't want to see them succeed. And if they do, they want all the credit for it. So instead of sending FEMA in there to do its emergency management job, they tried to pull FEMA out, and then they got leaked. So FEMA said, okay, fine, we're staying. And then they hire a company with one person to distribute food to everybody on the island. They don't do that. They hire one company with 3 or 4 employees to provide the entire electrical grid for Puerto Rico, and that stalls, doesn't get done because the corruption extends even through the Puerto Rican government. And you got Governor Rosario, right?
I forget
The governor of Puerto Rico,
yeah,
hanging out with Donald Trump and trying to get him to pay attention and doing everything he can to not look like a brown noser, but to also know the only way you get something from Donald Trump is to shove your nose all the way up his ass. Pierce Morgan knows about that, right?
Hey.
But when you do that kind of stuff, like we've been talking about, the optics and the hypocrisy of it is you see now the governor of Puerto Rico not getting things done because Donald Trump doesn't think he's sucking up to him enough. So you get these giant, massive awarded contracts to cronies and people that know the administration, exact copies of swamp monsters. They just smell different, and you don't get the job done. The job is not getting done. Donald Trump is the king of debt for a reason. He's the king of bankruptcies. He's the king of lawsuits. He's the king of libel. This is a person who never actually gets anything done. He attaches his names to the successes and nothing else. Victory has 100 fathers, and defeat is an orphan.
By the way, Ricardo Rosello,
right?
Rosello.
Rosetto?
Rosello.
Don't try it.
No, Rosario. Just
What?
Rosello.
Like Rosario Dawson?
Rosello.
Like
Joseph.
the Rosetta Stone?
Joseph, don't do it. Don't.
Come on, Joe. You're half Puerto Rican, bro. Get in the game.
Don't do it to
Yes,
yourself.
and all of my kids will be Puerto Ricans.
Number
Sorry,
3.
man.
Okay.
Jesus Christ, bro.
Yeah. but
Okay.
but in a serious note, just
you got
like,
red though. Just say you got a little shy there.
just like the Donald Trump and the Republicans will take victory for every bit of the gains in the stock market and gains in the economy and drops in unemployment rates and exports and trades and all that stuff, and they will take no credit for giant, massive plunges. They don't even acknowledge the fact that every time we've had major tax cuts, we've entered into recessions, that they just increased all this money for hurricane relief that they could have just done in one shot, but they just keep doing it piecemeal, despite the fact that they're not getting things done through government forces. They're trying to get these things. You can't do everything through private industry. The government is there for a reason. FEMA is there for a reason, and they're not getting the job done.
They're not.
So you have Puerto Ricans upset. You've got Puerto Ricans that live on the mainland that are upset. They're asking the people from the Virgin Islands and the representatives from Puerto Rico. I mean, even Eleanor Holmes Norton, the representative from Washington, D.C., who doesn't have an official vote in Congress yet, has brought up things like that. Like he treats Washington, D.C. like his own little personal playground. He bankrupted bonds in Puerto Rico when he tried building golf courses and stuck the government with it, and then says it's their fault for being in debt. There are simple ways to fix things. There are ways to get things done, but it's all about optics, and it's all about playing off the hypocrisy as if it's not really you doing anything wrong.
Yes.
So we're stuck with a Puerto Rico still without power, without Wi-Fi, where you slap a tax bill that puts a 20% excise tax on pharmaceutical goods coming from the island, where you leave food in boats offshore and then pay someone $150 million to distribute 1% of what the promised goal was.
Yeah. And with that, we move on to a lighter topic before we end the show.
Let's get a little lighter.
So for you that are not familiar with Joe the way I am for the last 12, 13 years, he is an avid Eagles fan. And his Eagles, his Birds, have just won the 52nd Super Bowl, beating Tom Brady and the New England Patriots.
Down with King Brady, long live St. Nicholas.
Very, very good game, which was just, shot for shot, just being answered by both quarterbacks. I have to say, Nick Foles, you are the fucking man. And I feel sorry for you, and I hope you end up in a great team where you could start every freaking day. Because, sir, you were throwing dimes in that game. You were getting balls into places they had no business being in.
Hey,
you were making corners just look absolutely ridiculous out there.
And you made Tom Brady look ridiculous because he couldn't do the play that you did.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The
right?
Phillies special.
It was like, hey, look, I can do this better. But
Unless
Joe,
my girlfriend's
the
watching right
backup
now, I might
quarterback,
actually
right?
get the Philly
he
special
was
tattooed.
he
He
got
was.
drafted by the Eagles back in 2013 or 2012, I think. He had a great season for them in 2013. I think he holds the record for most touchdowns in an Eagles game, which is 7 by a quarterback.
That was
He
against
made the
Denver,
Pro
right?
Bowl that year. He threw for
Oh,
an
not
insane
Denver.
amount of yards. And you know what they
Detroit.
did to him?
Detroit.
Chip Kelly comes in and destroys and dismantles the Eagles, gets rid of all their best players, and they trade this poor guy to St. Louis. He has a shitty year in St. Louis.
Clavicle. He broke his clavicle.
Whatever. You just don't get rid of a guy that did that for you. He went to St. Louis, had a shitty season, went to KC, backed up that whole year. This past season, Philly says, "Hey, we need someone good at a discounted rate to back up Carson Wentz if we need him. Let's bring him back." Lo and behold, week 14, Carson Wentz gets an ACL tear. Everyone thinks that, the Eagles are out for it. They've been leading the NFC up at that point. Wentz was supposed to be the MVP. And pretty much all Eagles fans died that night.
We
Superhero
had
nigga.
myocardial infarcts.
Yeah.
Just small heart attacks.
And then superhero man over here ends up the season winning 2 in a row and then takes him to the promised land by playing just lights fucking out against some of the best defenses in the league this year. I mean, he went at it against Minnesota, beat Tom Brady, and beat Atlanta. So,
now let me
this
ask
guy-
you-
after losing to the Cowboys of that last game, I mean, you kind of start thinking, like, can we really do this? But it was the defense that carried us, and that is why I'm not so absolutely convinced that Carson Wentz is the only reason we're going to be good next year. I think we built a solid team
Carson is
that has a
legit.
chance to go to the Super Bowl for the next 3 or 4 years. We've got, players on this team that are young, that are healthy, that are hungry.
And political.
Very
political.
You've got Howie Long's son, Chris, who's saying
He's not going to the White House.
He's not going to the White House. He gave his entire paycheck to charity this year. We've got people that, like Kelsey, who gave his speech at the end of the parade.
How'd he end it, Joe?
He was screaming into the mic, Philly fan, blah, 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 blah. And he used a lot of profanity, and since this is a family-friendly show, I shan't repeat it. But he said fuck a lot. We understand a lot that Philly fans were derided for most of our lives as
they didn't help their cases
dirty Philly bullies, that we were uncivilized and uncouth, and yet we won the Super Bowl. And after the Super Bowl was over, you see pictures of Broad Street and South Street, and you see that
you were there, Joe. Tell us about it. How was it?
I wasn't at the after Super Bowl party. I was with my friends, and we were celebrating heartily. I shed a tear.
But you were at the parade, though.
I was at the parade, yes. But if you can get drunk Philly fans to climb light poles and 30-foot fences, I believe a Mexican can climb a 30 or 40-foot wall. So I think Donald Trump needs to have paid a little bit of attention to that. Yes, this was Super Bowl 52. This was our first trophy, just after the NFL
and a rematch
merger.
after the last
And
one
a
we lost.
rematch against Tom Brady, who
Which was a
didn't
close
even
game.
shake Nick Foles' hand afterwards.
But no one's saying anything about him.
He went
No
and
one's
he
saying
cried
anything
on
about him.
Giselle's shoulder, and Giselle had to tell their kids that Daddy just needs to share because he already has 5 rings, and he just needed to share. Everybody has to lie to their kids sometimes, but
I don't
man,
lie to my kids,
they
so.
are assholes. I mean, we're talking about Big Dick Nick versus deflated Golden Balls Brady. And I think that
Wow.
we have a
Okay.
good few years ahead of us. I think if Nick stays on as our backup, which it's hard to put a Super Bowl winning quarterback in a backup position, even if he goes somewhere else, I think for a very rare moment in football fandom, you will find that Philly fans will probably be okay. They'll still support him to wherever he goes.
I think he's
But
such
Carson
a-
is also our franchise
Yeah,
quarterback.
yeah.
He's a great quarterback. I mean, man, bursted out of that. I remember that game where he bursted out of that huddle and just went down.
I can't.
I mean,
I love Carson Wentz. I'm not
it's
an Eagles fan at all.
amazing. It's amazing.
And I love watching
and
that guy
they are
play.
like brothers.
Yeah.
The two of them worked very well together. And Doug Peterson, Dougie P.
A perennial backup, too, in his career.
We're talking about 10 years ago coaching high school, and now he is coached the
Riding
Super Bowl.
high.
Yes, riding high
Fly,
on the Super
Eagles,
Bowl win.
fly.
I mean, Jeff Lurie has given him a nice little bonus check, I'm sure. And to be honest, it was something that we really needed. And also, when you want to put a political stance on it, which you're not supposed to be political at sporting events, even though Mike Pence probably never heard that one. It also
We'll get into that
did the
shortly.
exact opposite of what you said you've been feeling. It actually gave me hope. It backed up this idea that that the
The
underdogs
underdog.
can win, that the people who are being walked over will eventually step up and be like, okay, keep walking, keep walking. You saw what Viking fans did on our rocky steps, and we're just like, okay, talk some shit,
Yeah.
talk some shit, and then we hit them.
But we could
back
give it a
to back to
political
back.
spin. I mean, when you
could.
think about it,
Tom Brady was Donald
is
Trump's
a
boy.
yeah. So
You
is
know?
Bill Belichick, Robert Kraft, the owner of the Patriots. They're all Trump supporters. They're all defending him.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the Eagles players, both white and black, but young players, are very, very socially
And you
active.
mentioned that before on the show.
We did
a
it
lot.
on a show a couple of weeks ago, and I'm very happy for them. And I think a large majority of them are not going to go to the White House when they're invited, and they're going to take an opportunity to,
All right, folks,
to stand up. I know we're making
there's some heat going on in the chat here.
why? What's up?
So you made your 30-foot Mexican wall joke, and Jason says he's not sure why country security is a joke, because apparently no one can tell jokes anymore. But Roddy
Sarcasm is dead.
Martinez says the country already is secure. Jason hits him with an LOL.
I wonder if he really is laughing
then
out loud.
Ronnie Martinez says he's worried about the majority in it already, and Jason says read more.
I
Books,
imagine,
not
as much as I
newspapers.
have respect for Jason
man.
and I appreciated that he was our first ever call in, I can only imagine he gets a majority of his news from one source, maybe two or three, and I could just be assuming that, and I know that just makes an asset of you and me. But when you pay attention to all the sources of news, when you pay attention to the sources that are closer to the center, that are less partisan, that are
Or the people living it.
or the actual human beings that are living it, not just looking in your backyard and saying that there's Mexicans running through like deer. When you actually pay attention to the things that are happening, you look at the reports, you look at things like UN reports, you look at NPRs and the BBCs and the stuff like that. When you pay attention to the actual news and not just the hype, not just the spin, not just the idiosyncratic, ideological translations that come from those things, you can tell very easily that we are not much different from many other countries, that we are in no way, shape, or form like countries in Europe right now that are experiencing mass migration from Africa and the Middle East. Again, all people fleeing violence and terrorism, which is a completely reasonable reason to want to leave. These are people that didn't want to give up their homes. These aren't people that want to go to a place where they don't look like their neighbors, where they don't speak the language, where they don't even know what the money is. People don't just up and leave their homes, just like you don't just up and leave your home to move to Canada or to move to Mexico or to move to the East Coast.
Yeah.
You don't just do that. Just
So,
like
yeah.
I've lived in New Jersey my entire life, despite the fact that I was born in Philadelphia, Hahnemann Hospital. I was born in Philadelphia. I lived in South Jersey for over 20 years, and I moved to North Jersey. And even just moving from the south of the state to the north of the state, it was a big transition, and it's two different people.
Yeah.
If I were to go all the way to the West Coast and try to live in Washington or Oregon or California or Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, every single one of those options, it would be uprooting my entire life and trying to assimilate into what amounts to a new culture, despite the fact that I use the same money and language. It's not the same.
Yeah.
It's not.
Look, this became a Brown thing again, I guess, with the conversation, which is what Steve was trying to say before in your comment, Jason, because I feel that we are secure. And if we're not, it's not Browns or blacks that are shooting people up. It's predominantly white Christian men who are killing people left and right, or white cops killing black people in this country. So if we're really worried about the security within our borders, then, I mean, your argument or your comment holds no weight. And just to, I give more credence to what Joe was just saying, I'm a first-generation American. Both my parents, and Ronnie's my brother, our dad immigrated from Honduras. My mom immigrated from Ecuador. They've been here long enough. They've been here 3-4 decades almost each. They love the United States. They understand, that it's given them a life they couldn't have had in their country. But by no means does that mean that they don't think about their home, that it doesn't hurt every day to be that, thousands of miles away from where you grew up, your family, who you knew, and the life that you know. It's still something that after, 40 years in this country, they haven't gotten over, and most immigrants feel that way. So no one comes here purposely to just take and shit on what America means. No, they come here because, it is a country of better opportunity. And most people, not all people, most people do treasure that chance, respect that chance, and understand the opportunity that they're given. And I'm happy that my parents took that shot, because it's given me the opportunity to be here today, sitting across from Joe and sitting here with Joe, talking into camera, and not having to be worried about, how I'm going to find my food for lunch, or how am I going to feed my kids, or if the government's going to come down with tanks and take me away.
So
we're safe, basically is what I'm trying to say. We're fucking dandy here. We're good.
Yeah, Jason says that holds no weight. He says there's laws and there's facts.
Yes, most of which he doesn't seem to be paying attention to, because there are federal laws, there are state laws, there are laws of humanity, there are common laws. There are, if you're just going to talk about the things we write down in books, I can make a law right now, or I could at least get a majority of people, if I could whip them together to say anybody named Jason has to be kicked out of the country. What would he say then? He would say it's not fair.
Yeah, and
that's an unnatural law. But that doesn't hold any weight because it's arbitrary and capricious. Yes, there are laws there are immigration laws, there are border security laws.
No, you did not say that. I'm sorry, Jason. No, dude. No, man. Hold on. Okay, St. Patty's Day. Irish parade. All right. I'm pretty sure it's not about not being proud of you being an American. It's not forgetting where the hell you come from. And for most of these people, all right, they're not even a generation removed from it. Not everybody celebrates. I've never seen my parents at any parade representing their country. But again, it's more about culture than identity. It is more about culture and identity than it is about not loving your own country where you come from. And again, that kind of goes to show the white privilege. They even have the audacity to say that.
Yeah, there's no country on earth that is like the United States.
They do what in Germany? Like, come on, dude. Germany's not a melting pot.
Germany has outlawed the Nazi party, and we have Nazis running for government in our country.
And Germany has a history of just being a Germanic people. Of being like...
They became a country in 1896 when they finally unified all the German provinces.
The US is a melting pot. We've always... I'm sorry, dude.
This is not a homogenous society. It never has been. It was never built that way. We started off with 13 colonies and spread west.
We don't have a legal
Indians
language.
Out. We took territory from Mexico.
Yeah.
We did all of these things, and yes, we secured them. They are ours now. The Southwest is part of the United States now. But
land that was stolen from Mexico.
We're talking about that. You live in a city that is a Spanish name, San Diego.
San Diego. Saint Diego.
It's either whale's vagina.
Whale's vagina. It might be.
Or is it just a whale's vagina that lives there?
Let me
I'm sorry. That just got me heated right there. I'm sorry, man.
Let's all.
And of course, you bring up Germany.
And we just,
the capital of racism.
We were just joined by Giselle Ortega, so thank you, Giselle, for watching. She's actually a legal immigrant that just came here from her country. So I'm pretty sure if she had read or is reading this, I'm sorry, but that is no.
Just a couple of things. I think that it is important to understand for all of us that our personal worldview is not a reality for everyone else in the world.
Exactly.
Right? And I also think that it's important to understand that not a lot of this is a pie. And a lot of times when you are brought up in a culture that tells you this world is your oyster, and then you see other people that maybe don't look or act like you sort of think that they are in some way taking something away from you. And not everything is a pie, and just because some other people are raising in the forefront or being represented more, it doesn't mean that other people are represented less. And I think that we jump into a lot of these corners, and we kind of demonize human beings, and I don't know that maybe we should do that. And I think that we are falling into the traps of our predispositions when we say things like, when we think that we're losing our jobs to them. That's a dog whistle. When we say that that they are all criminals and we're not safe, that is another dog whistle. So I think that if we want to be free-minded thinking individuals, and I'm by in no means saying that we need full, free, open borders, but I do think we need to maybe stop stoking the flames of either side of this.
Yeah, and
right? And a lot of what happens is people jump into their corners. So I just remember, we are talking about human beings here, and as I said before, jaywalking is breaking the law. Right?
Raping a woman is against the law, but we still have a president that's perfectly fine with assault.
So, you know.
Look, and Jason, if you remember, we had similar views on what or how we should deal with illegal immigration. So again, I'm not like Steve, I'm not advocating open borders or that whatever, but your whole notion that it's unsecure is wrong again, and that's just fact. If you look at the facts of who's committing crimes in this country and who's really attacking who.
Also, just one more thing. I have been to France and Germany in 2016 and 2014. They're fine.
Yeah,
it's just,
they're good.
They're quite
good.
Fine.
And this whole notion right now, because now they're having this side conversation now here about the national anthem and this and that. Okay, what makes us, at least what I think and feel makes us American, are the values that America is supposed to stand for, right? Acceptance, tolerance, the right to your freedom, the right to pursue your happiness, the right to be who you are. It's the individual above the collective in a way, right? It's an individual above God or anything else, and that is what, at least in my opinion, the U.S. was meant to be, or at least a part of that.
We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created
exactly,
equal.
right? So it's more about the individual than anything. So if you're all bent out of shape because people don't want to do the Pledge of Allegiance anymore, which was something that didn't become something normal until the 1900s, right? That was written by a socialist, or the flag, taking a knee, you find it disrespectful. That you're putting more value on a piece of cloth. You're putting more value on words than the actual freedom that this country is supposed to give a person to not have to be forced to do any of that. And that in itself, to me, is more an American than taking a knee or not saying the Pledge of Allegiance, right? We can disagree. I think we might. But to me, American is just being who you are and being free to be that and not being judged by, oh, you're un-American, you're a traitor, blah, 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 because you wouldn't. It's a piece of fucking cloth, man. It's a flag. It's all it fucking is, right? So if you stop defending or believing in the values of what that flag stands for, don't get all worked up about the flag or an allegiance, because it doesn't really matter.
I mean, honestly, if you cared that much about it, there wouldn't be Confederate flags running around all over the place saying the South will rise again. We're talking about a flag that represents the dissolution of the Union, a flag that represents white supremacy and is advocated as representing such, whether or not you say it actually is. That is what they use it for. It's just defending
our history, man.
Yeah, but
you
can defend your history all you want, but that is a flag that straight up means split the United States up, that the United States is not united. That is a
but that's
flag.
Okay to fly.
Yeah, but some people think that's perfectly okay to fly that flag, but they have a problem with someone taking a knee on the national anthem. Again, a song that was written, a long time ago, that was a poem that was put to music, that was taken from another country. I mean, everything about America is taken from somewhere else. Besides,
it is
I think,
a melting pot.
Yeah, besides, I think Broadway
it's just cool because white people got here first.
Jazz, there is almost nothing that is just 100% no influence outside American. The Statue of Liberty was built in France. Most cities in this country are named after Indian tribes, after Spanish or French titles. Most of our language is built off of Greek, off of Latin, off of German. There is nothing or rather, there is very little in this country that is 100% unadulterated American. Even in this country, we don't have an official
French
language.
Fries are American.
Even outside, of America, when you say it in Spanish, it's the Estados Unidos de los Estados Unidos. We are the United States of America, but this continent is America.
Yeah.
South America is America. We are all Americans. If you're within these borders, you're an American. Regardless of whether you walked here, you flew here and overstayed a visa, you swam here because you came from Cuba, and because the law said if you came from Cuba, you were okay, but if you came from Mexico, you're not. I know, they got rid of wet foot, dry foot.
Which I think's fair.
You're talking about if the laws are arbitrary and you're only going to support one law, but you're not going to support the enforcement of laws on another side, then your argument loses weight. Your argument is a sieve. It does not hold true that you can say that the borders are insecure, but at the same time, you don't care about what happens on the border of Canada. You don't care about the shipping containers coming in from Asia. You don't care about the people flying in from Eastern Europe to work jobs over the summer in shore towns all up and down the East Coast. You don't care about Native Americans that live on reservations because their land was stolen from them.
And you had mentioned before parades, but there are towns here in New Jersey, well, we're in New York, but in New Jersey, there's towns that are full of just Polish people, that are full of just Italian Italian people that speak their native language, that open up restaurants just for Polish food and whatever, same way Hispanics do. So again, it's only now becoming something where we're focused on it, or it becomes hypersensitive when it's about brown or black people, or just people that are darker than the white complexion, because every culture in the United States has that here. And maybe parade or no parade, doesn't matter. It exists.
So just full disclosure, Jason says he agrees on the whole dog whistles thing.
Yeah, I saw
well,
that.
I can read.
Well, no, this is for everybody else that doesn't read.
There are no such thing as Vikings anymore.
He's not saying the wall is correct. And he just
I've been reading.
The free market's not fair.
It's not.
It's not supposed to be. The world is not fair, but it can be made just.
But it's not really a free market either, so
It's
we
not.
can make that argument.
Yeah,
I mean, there's always laws and rules that dictate the market, so it's not really fucking free.
Yeah.
It's just the people that are
If
there.
there's a free market, there wouldn't be subsidies for oil.
And there wouldn't be rules saying what you can and cannot do, or where, whatever. It's just not free.
Yeah.
It's
All
an
right,
illusion of free.
Rather
But back
than
to
that-
the
This is why we
Eagles.
can't have nice things.
Yeah.
Super Bowl.
Super Bowl.
Let's
Yes.
talk about weed in New Jersey.
Okay.
Oh, I
Let's
thought
go.
we were
Let's
gonna
go
do
from green to
taxes.
green.
Green to green. All right.
Okay.
green
Well.
to green.
Okay. So
Before
the
taxes.
weed thing does. It's they also want us to stop saying marijuana because it's called cannabis, and marijuana is an epithet that was invented in the early 1920s to make it sound foreign and
Did
Hispanic.
not know that.
To
Marijuana.
Yeah, to make it seem like it was a terrible, terrible thing that came from Mexico because it turns us all into rapists and murderers and killers. Just like
Was it Reefer
Madness
Party,
said.
right?
Reefer Madness.
Yeah, Reefer Madness. Right.
Great movie.
That's on my Netflix queue.
Yeah,
So
you should.
dumb.
You need to
It's
watch
so
the original.
dumb.
If you buy a DVD or a Blu-ray copy of Reefer Madness, the musical one with Alan Cumming and Anna Gasteyer, that comes with a copy of the original movie that they used word for word the lines from, but turned it into a musical and just sarcastically interpreted the entire thing. So
Cool.
Phil Murphy, as soon as possible, even next week, wants to see legislation brought into New Jersey that would bring us among the 9 or 10 states that already have marijuana legal, that have not seen dramatic spikes in crime or overdoses or problems, that have only seen dramatic increases in tax revenue.
Which goes to education.
Which
and
goes to
public
education
funding
and public services and such things like
infrastructure.
that. And other kinds of infrastructure. So part of the tax plan, because Republicans in Congress want to specifically target those people who stood against them during the 2016 election, we have to find other ways to make up for the money that we are now stripping from citizens of these states. So if you introduce a legalized marijuana bill, you tax the marijuana, you tax the production of it. And if we do it before Pennsylvania and New York, we have a corner on the industry, just like we did with Atlantic City and casinos until they started opening them up on our borders. But there are towns in New Jersey that are already passing laws to ban it ahead of time. But if you legalize it and it starts off in the medical facilities and then it branches out just like they did in Colorado, California, Oregon, Washington, D.C., all these places where people can grow their own and possess something that grows naturally in the world, then yes, you're allowing the free market to rule.
Yeah.
Because that's what the free market wants. The free market and democracy itself wants this to happen. You still have, old Jefferson Sessions sitting up there saying that they're going to Jefferson Beauregard Sessions.
God damn, is that really his name?
Yes.
Holy
He wants to come after everybody.
That's some southern shit right there.
Yeah.
Just give him
That's
the
a
most
southern
racist
Georgia
name.
peach.
Yeah.
Jefferson
So
Bogart.
so that on top of finding a way to help with the overages of the $10,000 SALT limit that is on the federal income taxes. If you have more than $10,000 in property taxes, state and local taxes, SALT, they want to find a way to help make sure that you don't get double taxed on that. So besides trying to sue the federal government for double taxation, the governor and many mayors and politicians around the state think that there is an option, and I think we talked about that in the last time, that if you form a charitable organization and have people pay into it, that it will count as a write-off. The only problem is that if it goes too far, then it triggers the alternative minimum tax, something Donald Trump said he wanted to get rid of.
Yeah.
But,
and it was part of one of the first iterations of the law, right?
Yeah.
They got rid of it, but then
But so if they get that done, then you just have to donate the money equal to the amount over the $10,000, and that money would go into a organization that would then pay the state on your behalf in an amount equal to what your property taxes would be. And I mean, it's a lot of finagling of the law, and it might not necessarily be cool Because if it was on the other side and Republicans were trying to do something like this, I mean, there'd be Democrats all over the place saying you're trying to circumvent the law. But if we can't petition our government for redress of these grievances against us, then we use our states. And that's what the 10th Amendment kind of gives teeth to, even though my professors would suggest that the 10th Amendment has no teeth. I think that it will probably kind of work out, but I also think
maybe
that
the 10th Amendment has dentures.
It does.
For everyone who doesn't know the 10th Amendment, including me, which was the 10th Amendment, yeah?
All power is not invested into the federal government.
Why the fuck are you looking at me that way?
Reserved to the states and the people, respectively.
He's judging you.
There he is judging
But
me.
the problem is
I'm
that
not a walking constitution, Joe.
The
That's
problem
your job.
is that the 11th Amendment kind of snips it, and the fact that they didn't include the word expressly also gives lessens the impact of the 10th Amendment. So it was basically supposed to be there for states' rights. To say anything that the federal government has not been given the right to do, the states have that right.
Okay.
So I mean, I also think that also pertains to the concealed carry permit thing, which passed the House and is now in the Senate. I think is absolutely an aberration. I think that it's just terrible to think that, that the federal government will pass a law that forces states to recognize the gun laws of another state. I mean, there's a Second Amendment says you have the right to bear arms, not to hide them.
But how really interesting something from another thing from Jason. It says a reason why NY, New York may fight it in other states is that areas that have done this have lost up to 15% in liquor sales.
Oh no.
Okay.
No, I'm just
less
saying,
drunk
like,
drivers.
No, I'm not saying that that's like a good thing,
Yeah.
but think about how like forces work.
Yeah,
right?
because everybody goes
Like-
for the liquor because it's legal.
I don't.
And-
when it's more damaging to your body.
No,
than
what I'm
marijuana
saying is,
or
will
cannabis.
the alcohol companies
No.
try to cockblock this thing?
Well,
No.
see, what they
I
did was
thought-
in places like Illinois and in Colorado, where Illinois didn't pass, but in Colorado, in Vermont, where they passed it with an actual law, not a petition on the ballot, they say that the marijuana for the commercial industries can only be transported by places that have liquor licenses for transporting alcohol, and that's the compromise that they made with them. So they gave almost a monopoly to
That's not
alcohol.
that fair. Shit, I didn't know that. That's
Well,
not
it
fair.
gave an almost monopoly to them because they said that they're the only ones with the expertise of transporting something dangerous and whatever. In any case, even if it does reduce liquor sales, it will increase sales elsewhere, and liquor companies should just get into the business of it. I guess we're talking about a free market. That's what.
Or
the free
infusing
market
it. You
says.
could infuse it with whatever. I mean, get creative with it.
Slow down. Just
No,
take it easy.
but second, no, because first of all, I'm happy to see that this has become a reality faster than I thought it would be. If you would have asked me maybe 2-3 years ago, I would have told you that this moment was not a week away, but maybe 10 years away of happening in New Jersey. I really didn't think it'd be possible this fast. I'm all for it. I'm trying to.
You got in this picture. You've got Phil Murphy flanked by Josh Gottheimer and Bill Pascrell, representatives from New Jersey. These are things that people in New Jersey. There are minorities of people who don't think this should be, and New Jersey has a very wide range of people, from incredibly billionaire wealthy to the poorest of the poor that live in this country. But
Do you
for the
think
most
it'll be
part,
passed?
I think it will.
Because I know there was some opposition to it after he got inaugurated.
There are people that were
Democrats,
and it's
which he was
because
counting
there's snubs, like Hudson County or the Steve
I know
Sweeney's
Fulop is doing
in
his own thing.
Gloucester. Like Steve Sweeney, that is the head of the Senate. I mean, they are pissed about how politics went in the past couple of years, and that they didn't get the positions that they wanted. So they might play around a little bit for the most part.
Or he couldn't get a casino.
In New Jersey, the governor is basically a king.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the most powerful governors in the union.
I'm happy.
One thing, about the whole sort of legalization train of marijuana, and I don't smoke.
Cannabis.
I never have.
I
I'm
smoke.
not saying that because we're on camera. It's whatever. It's fine.
I smoked and inhaled, but I haven't for a while.
I do believe that it should be legalized. It's not just the financial incentive.
Yeah.
Right. When these things are illegal, people go into the shadows to find them.
Yes.
Just like abortion.
Right? And furthermore, how many people are in jail right now in the prison system, ruining their lives and their futures because of this thing?
Yep.
And Black and brown communities tend to be over-policed, and so more predominantly there are Black and brown people in jail for the use.
And then the mandatory minimums are tied to
Right.
these.
Well, you've got the DA of San Diego saying that people can now apply for expungement of their records
And that should be the case
for
in every state that legalizes it.
Non-violent,
Yeah, and that
So-
should be the case in every state.
So
Marijuana
that should be right.
aside from the financial incentive, and it's also a financial incentive not to like lock people up and have
Yeah.
to-
But when Jeff Sessions owns stock in prisons, then yes,
Well, you
there
gotta
is a
fill those
financial.
prisons.
Or the simple fact that
market.
as an grown adult individual in a free nation, quote unquote, why are we negated to use something that we want of our own free will? And again, with
What if
legal,
what you want is heroin though? Like you got
Okay.
they have to have some rules.
well, no,
around
of
that.
course. And again, I'm not saying that either, but it's been proven, and it could be proved more if we could actually study it, and it's not a Schedule 1 drug. Cannabis does not have the effects of nicotine. It does not have the effects even as bad as alcohol, but yet it's put in the same category as LSD
It does have tar,
and
though.
methamphetamines. And well, yeah, but
Ask
okay.
any dinosaur. Tar sucks.
All right, but hey, you could vape it. You can,
Go
you
to
know,
La Brea.
you could smoke it on a pipe, a bong, whatever. There's
Also,
other ways.
it
You don't have to
doesn't-
roll it.
By the way, if you regulate it, then you will actually know what's in it. When you go to your
Exactly.
weed dealer,
That was
you
gonna
don't
make
know what's
it's
in there
laced. It could
because
be
it's-
laced with
And right now,
cocaine.
because it
What
is
are you gonna call
scheduled,
customer service.
because
Yeah,
it's
complain.
scheduled the way it is, you can't do
Yeah.
any kind of research on it. The federal government won't fund any kind of research into it, just like they do with tobacco and alcohol.
I get mine out of the state. I'm not gonna say through who.
I think you should just take
Stop
it
right
easy
there.
there.
No, but I'm just saying in California they have boxes for the vape, right? And it tells you exactly what strain it is and what it's for. It tells you if it's a hybrid, if it's an indica, if it's a sativa. Then it says, if you want,
But what
an-
authority do you go to make sure that box is labeled?
In California, I'm not sure what the case is. I'm not sure if in New Jersey that's been written out in the bill, but I know bills
I
exist.
don't know, they just told us last week not to eat romaine lettuce because it was going to kill you. Like what?
And now
we
there's
don't have-
legislation for Tide Pods coming out,
First
so I
of
don't
all,
know.
First of all, I only eat baby spinach, so
Mm.
I have long been off. Of
At least you're not. At
Why
least you're
can't
not
you
in
eat adult
classes like
spinach? You
Obama
won't
who
let
eats
it grow up?
arugula,
Oh,
and then that's like a
elitist.
very like
But I
elitist.
do-
Sorry.
How about a mix of baby?
How about you just stop eating children?
And
How about you just stop
I'm
eating
not
children?
Tom Cruise.
Wait, what?
Tom
You can't
Cruise
say
eats
that.
babies. Don't-
Scientologists
God
will come
damn
after
it.
us.
All right.
That Super Bowl ad?
No,
Jesus
we
Christ.
should wrap this thing out.
Yeah,
What,
yeah.
what else do we have?
The Olympics happened. North and South Korea are under the same banner. Russia's not allowed to participate. There was a virus going on,
And we're all alive.
and we're all alive still.
Sweet.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny too. The North Koreans have now sent handlers and advisors and spies to hang out with their entire delegation because they're afraid they'll defect.
Sweet.
So
Right.
now they are.
I was wondering when they'd do that,
Yeah,
or if
well,
they had done it.
They are, and they're not allowed to be by themselves. They're not allowed to go to the bathroom alone.
Wow.
The women's ice hockey team is paired up with the South Korean ice hockey team, and they're running under the same flag. The
Yeah.
South Koreans are kind of pissed off because they're like, "You're just backing off of all
North
the good
Korea
stuff we
officially
did."
invited the South Korean president to visit.
Yeah.
It seems like North Korea is winning
He's
the
not
Olympics,
going to
man.
leave Pyongyang.
No.
He's going to stay there because it's the only
It's
safe
the-
place.
Yeah, man, I wouldn't leave if I was
He
him
needs
either.
his safe space.
yeah.
But yeah, the Olympics in Pyeongchang they're going.
And North
you know.
Korea's making the most of it, right? After their debacle back in the late 80s, trying to do a World Fair after South Korea's, South Korea hosted the Olympics. And they tried to one up them the next year and pretty much coincided with the fall of the USSR. So that's what led to the 2-3 million dying from starvation after they had a flood, and then they had
They built a lot
rain
of fake towns
and
too.
drought. Yeah, it was just there's like a 150 story hotel that still hasn't been finished since the 80s, and
But
it's just
I
standing
think,
there pretty unused and unfinished.
What's that
And
basketball
Marble
player?
Street, Dennis Rodman.
Yeah, I think he hangs out at that unfinished hotel /
Probably.
ski resort now.
Yeah.
So
And they have so much money. They have marble
well,
in their
Kim Jong
subways.
is running out of money because he spent it all on nuclear weapons. Just
And
like
Dennis Rodman.
yeah, and
just to
Dennis
compare
Rodman.
his size of his
Yeah, because he wanted to show off his military.
towards Trump.
Because that's exactly what you should do with all of your money.
But yeah.
Show it off.
But anyway, here is
And maybe he needed to make a bigger button.
a bigger.
Yeah, you're just gonna build an entire button the size of a town.
Like it doesn't do anything. It's just a button.
Well, the North Koreans hung a giant flag 3 stories tall off the windows of their hotel that they're staying at, which in most circumstances is illegal because South Korea is a homogenous society and they can tell people it's illegal to be a person. But because
Cool.
they're in the
Didn't know that.
Olympic delegation, it is exempt from that law that says you can't display a North Korean flag.
I don't know if you know this, but they've now taken over South Korea. That's what the flag was.
It's
You
true.
know, like when you land on the moon and you put
Yeah,
the
you
flag
put the
down.
flag down.
That's it.
He pissed on it
Yeah,
then, right?
Yeah,
You know,
thinking about going to
mark
Moscow
his
or
territory.
just like putting an American flag up and then running. That
Well,
will not
anyways.
happen. I'll be shot in 3 seconds, I'm sure.
So I
Right
guess this
outside the prison.
concludes not our 115th episode, but our 15th episode.
15.
Yes,
Well,
I'm
it's kind of like it's supposed to be like a college course.
Yeah,
You know, we're
And,
getting up there.
we're getting up there.
I remember I went into the 500s at one point.
Yeah. But thank you everyone for tuning in this week. We will be back next week with the latest White House scandal.
Because there will be.
You know what? We
Because
can't
there
say
will
that
be-
there's going to be a scandal. There
Joe,
might-
we're 15 weeks in, Joe. Just
aliens
learn.
could invade
Just-
and give us all hope for the future. Then again, we just cut the
No.
NASA budget, so probably
Yeah,
not.
so probably, and we have a roadster out there, a Tesla roadster with
There's
dummy
a
out there
dummy in
floating
there
in
spinning
space,
around,
yeah.
proving the
it's a
Earth
new
isn't
it's a
flat.
new Uber.
Yeah,
They're
listen,
trying to Uber to Mars now. Who knows?
Uber to Mars.
Hey,
get
They're
out
trying to
of
go
here.
pick up Matt Damon.
Hey,
he got
the
lost
Tesla
in
is
Mars.
The Tesla is the fastest EV in space. So
It's true.
There's
It's
that.
the number one car in space.
Sweet, the number one seller in the moon.
And I think its rotations are proving that the Earth is not, in fact, flat.
I also
And we collectively heard a bunch of dying flat earthers gasp when they saw that video.
I think they were
also
gasping because they were asthmatic.
Worry though, like because like if I'm writing like a science fiction novel, it'll be like, you know, we sent out a car and that car basically has our address on it and it just sends the evil.
We sent out a
aliens,
disc
like,
with our actual address on it and pictures of us and how to kill us.
That too.
So what we thought would save us ends up dooming us.
Yes.
Or it
Got
comes
it.
back and the car has now become sentient and the dummy inside is alive with alien technology and has come back to
Well,
invade.
what if we
The Transformer.
saw-
It's the first Transformer.
What
Oh
if-
no!
What if we saw like an alien car with a spacesuit in it just floating in the sky? Like, what would be the reaction on Earth?
Shoot it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's pretty
that
much
that or pandemonium by the religious
sounds-
zealots in this,
God has come back and he's riding in a caddy.
or they're all committing suicide because we're not the only ones.
Oh, I feel
The
so
world
bad
does
for all
not
the
revolve
people
around
who
us.
Committed
All right,
suicide thinking the end
folks.
of times was coming.
Tell them where they can find you. Who's first?
Oh my
You can find me at J Martinez Jr. on Twitter.
Okay, just
Don't worry about finding me on Facebook.
on the Twits.
I don't want you to find me on
Yeah.
Facebook.
too late.
You could find us on Facebook though, and at Twitter on the second page, the 2ND page
The end.
on both.
2NDPG is a website we're building.
Yeah, we will get to that at some point when Joe decides to hang out
and
on
we'll
Thursday
be on
nights.
iTunes soon as well.
iTunes, SoundCloud. Thank you to Steve.
R Squared Network is an LLC
Yes,
now.
follow the R Squared
It's
Network,
actually
which
R
is
Squared Entertainment LLC because there's more
Oh,
than just this,
okay.
just video games and other things.
Coming
All
out
right.
with books.
We'll
video
talk about
games.
that soon.
We'll talk about that
Novels,
soon.
Comic books.
and Joe. Where can we find you, Joe? Do you remember?
The thing with the
Joseph S.
It's on my
Osborne.
shirt.
And Steve, this is your time to plug and plug
Yeah.
away,
All
Steve.
right, later today. Firstly, you can check out, we have another show called The 36 Chambers of Fatherhood. You can check that out. That is a bi-weekly show, so it doesn't air this week.
Okay.
We did a
You mean
show
it goes
last
both
week,
ways?
And yes, it does. And we're going to have another show this week. But today, we're going to be shooting on The Real, and we're going to talk about all those Super Bowl trailers. We're also going to talk about...
The Venom trailer was a little lacking.
It was a generic
Yeah,
sci-fi trailer. And we are also going to explain MoviePass to you in case you don't know what it is, how it is, and
Okay.
why it may pose a threat to the theater going industry. And also we are going to cast the next Nightwing, or the first Nightwing. Because Chris McKay is apparently, the director, is asking for help casting it, so we're going to help him out.
Nothing wrong with asking for help.
Hey, you gotta go to the
Damn,
fans.
Nightwing.
But
Okay.
yeah, so you can find me on
Zac Efron. I'm joking.
No,
Sorry, I'll just go with the generic one.
No,
yeah.
you can find me at Steve A.M. Johnson on your favorite social media network, as long as it's not Snapchat. And you can find me later today on The Real, where we will keep you up to date on all the goings on in TV and movies. And
we need to get Daniel Radcliffe to play Elijah Wood in a movie, and then have
No,
Elijah Wood
no.
play Daniel Radcliffe meeting
no,
him.
because then you'd break the space-time paradox.
It's
and it
true.
would be
And then
And
they
then
look
it's
at the
over.
camera and they
We
talk
don't
to us,
do
and
that.
our
Then
heads
Barry
explode.
Allen loses his power. His mom survives, and
yes,
Papa
it's-
Bruce becomes.
it's not good.
Yeah, no,
All right,
let's not do
folks.
that.
Say
All right.
bye to the people.
Bye,
Yeah,
to
guys.
people,
Thank you for tuning in. Bye, people.
Hugs, not drugs.
Fuck 45.
but also sometimes.
All right.